Hello, hello. Gonna drop Frag East and watch your stream while my teammates die. That sounds great. Alright, you know what? No music. Hello?
Oh, wow.
Yo.
How you doing, M&M's?
Good, and you?
Good. Actually, I've been really angry today.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Oh, you
I
just
don't
lied
know.
to us already?
Maybe. I mean, it's still good. I'm just angry.
About
Why?
what you want to share?
It's life.
Oh.
Sometimes I just feel angry. I don't know.
Have you
Hold
tried
up.
not feeling angry?
Wait, do you just randomly feel angry for no reason?
Yeah? I mean, that's pretty normal. Sometimes just like these things are annoying me today.
I'm sorry that. Okay, so things are annoying today. So then, is it just
Alright,
like
see ya,
your
Roser.
mood
Yep,
and
today's
you're
the podcast.
easily angered, or
Have fun.
like is there actually something that made you angry today?
Also, hi Zephyr
Probably
Eater.
both. It's
Come.
probably
Thank you for
combinations
the
of
kind
like
words. Come, indeed.
long-term things that are frustrated with that make you angry sometimes, and sometimes your mood, just things that normally wouldn't bother you are annoying. Sometimes things just go wrong and you just feel angry.
You okay, Lisa?
No,
Yeah.
he's angry.
He's angry.
That's okay.
He's angry. No, it is not okay.
I think it's okay.
Anger leads to stress. Stress leads to other bad things, and bad things equals to, well, bad things.
Bad things, bad. True.
Like, honestly, you don't have to disclose anything, but did something happen or?
No, it's fine. I'm just angry.
Just okay.
Yeah.
You're not angry at me, hopefully, right?
No,
Are you
I was
angry at
trying
me?
to make strawberries and cream, and I didn't have the right whisk, and so it was very difficult and took a long time, and I'm angry.
Like maybe angry is a big word. Maybe it's more moody.
Sure, if that's
Right.
what you want to call it.
I'm trying to help you out because otherwise you will have to deal with Dr. Senpai Cha. Right.
He's
With
a
the
doctor now. Okay.
psychoanalysis. No, just
Okay.
kidding. So, welcome, guys. Today, by the way, before I start, I have like literally like 4 clocks with 4 different times in my house, and they all say something different. So the one say it's past 10 past 10. The other says it's like it's not even 10. So I was kind of late because of that, because my can show you guys.
How could you?
I don't want to. Like on my mobile phone, it's not even 10 at this point. So there you go.
Wait, how's
Yeah.
your mobile phone should be like network
don't know.
synced time? How could it be off?
Yeah, maybe I have like a local time in Eastern Netherlands or something. I don't know.
Oh shit,
I
is
think
time diverging? Is Europe drifting away?
It's like, yeah, that's only the UK, right?
New dimension.
Yeah.
That's only like they dragged it to more to the sea when they did Brexit, right? That's how it works. So yeah,
Hey, we do know that in some places in the universe, time and space works differently.
Well, in all places, right?
have
All
you?
places time works differently. Okay, so then we
Because
have to like
time's
distinguish
relative.
between what is okay. No. Okay, so time is relative, but that's as a time as a construct. But then when
Oh,
you're gonna
okay.
get into like metaphysics, I guess, or time as an actual thing, then we know, or astronomers or physicists, whatever, they found out that like, yeah, it's quite different in other places. I don't know how. They just say it's different.
What does that mean?
Well, what you said time. Okay, we're going way off topic, but what you said time is relative is totally. It's a theory of relativity, right? So depending on the gravitational field, on your velocity, you're gonna perceive time differently from someone at a different in a different intensity of a gravity field or a different velocity. They're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
But well, mostly on Earth, like people above sea level mostly experience the same time. The differences will be very minute. You need to be at like 90+% of the speed of light to start experiencing relativistic effects, or like around a black hole or something that has really intense gravity. But it's true that it's like different for everyone.
Well,
but I mean, yeah, sorry.
Yes. But I mean, we've also like moved to start using like space-time to describe things a lot more, right? Because these two things are like interconnected. So
yeah,
never mind. Yeah, we should have a time debate or a gravity debate. That'd probably be interesting.
You know, like if you talk about like time with the time zones, right? Have you ever like the weirdest time zones in the world? Have you ever checked that out? Because they don't make any sense. Like if you grab a map of like if you just go to Google right now.
Is this gonna be more than like Russia or China having like really wide time zones, or
it has to do with like islands in the Pacific? So
well,
time
also,
zone map.
If in my opinion, because I looked at the map a couple days ago, I think Europe has the most insane time zones in the world. Like France is right underneath the UK, but the UK is a different time zone. Who the fuck knows why?
The CET, the Central Europe time, right? That's like the same as it is like on the most west side of France, even in Spain. So Spain and Portugal are part of that as well. However, the UK isn't, but it's like on the same like line, right?
Yeah.
And then also part of that whole time zone is like Poland as well. So it's like way big. That doesn't make any sense because
way big.
way big. That's what your mom said last night.
Yeah.
Oh. So I got a time zone map over here. But if you go to Iceland, basically that's part of it's like the UK zone.
Oh, it operates on European time.
And then somewhere in the Pacific, it gets like really like extremely like because you have like islands that want to be with each other and have the same time zone while they are like thousands of miles apart.
I want to share my time zone with you, Uwu.
Yeah. Anyways, let's do some actual topics, right? Let's get into it. So welcome guys. For anybody that's seeing this right now, welcome to Lib Praxis. Of course, we have our usual suspects over here: Senpai Chow, Elysium, and Neyman. Thank you guys for coming on, taking the time out of your day. I appreciate it. So, and that being said, today we're going to talk about Cuba. So, what I want to do, because of the fact that a name suggested it, you can introduce the topic and you can pick whatever topic around Cuba you want to talk about first.
Okay, sure. So I think Cuba is a relevant topic right now because of obviously what's going on right now. There's for anyone who hasn't followed it, there are big protests in Cuba. At the same time, there are big crackdowns on the protests. There are counter protests. There is a complicated situation unfolding there. For different reasons. I would first off like to explore those reasons. And notably, one of the main reasons is, and it's maybe indirectly connected to last week's discussion, or last podcast discussion, is that there is a specific diplomatic tool that has been used against Cuba and other countries in the world, which is economic sanctions. And I think it's an interesting topic to discuss, specifically in regards to Cuba, and also in general in regards to diplomacy. Is it an effective tool? What are its costs, its benefits? Yeah. think that sums up how I want to approach the topic.
Somebody in Senpai's house chat. What the fuck? But
don't talk about it. Let's
Yeah,
move on.
yeah,
Wait, what?
I see the message. Yeah.
okay, whatever, dude. Anyway, so do you want to talk about the recent events first, or do you want to talk about the sanctions?
I think the thing is, I think they're tied, right? As much as it's absolutely legitimate to go into specific mistakes in Cuban economic policy, it's also undeniable that 50, 60 years of harsh economic sanctions has had its toll on their economy. The country would probably not look at all the same if not for the sanctions. And what's happening right now, basically, to put it very simply, is people are unhappy with the economy collapsing because of COVID in 2020. The economy regressed by 10.9%, if I recall correctly. Inflation. And obviously, COVID itself, the difficulties in access to proper healthcare, and the COVID epidemic have fomented distrust in the government to properly handle the crisis.
Yeah. So, what do we do now? Like, would you guys want to have like an opening statements? I assume name. You pretty much did that already, right?
Yep.
So let's go to Elysium.
Wait, I'm not super clear what question Neyman's asking actually. Sorry.
Okay, what are your?
I would.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just have an opening statement about your take on Cuba.
I get I
Like,
could do that.
like-
But my opening statement's not gonna be very relevant to what Neyman just
Okay.
said. But okay.
Okay, but
That's fine.
I wanna. Then the question is: in recent events, would you change the sanctions with recent events, and would you say the sanctions are to blame? Are pretty much like it's bad that we have those sanctions.
Oh boy. Okay. I guess that is a lot of questions that are not ones I was quite prepared for. That's fine. We can give framings in general. So I'm only gonna give generalities that start until we get into this. I don't think while I agree that sanctions are detrimental, I wouldn't think that they're the sole contributor to a COVID situation or the current unrest in Cuba. And overall, I would still think they are a good tool to use for international order and given current geopolitics, I don't think they are as necessary right now, and I would be in favor of their general repeal. Does that work?
Okay. Senpai-chan?
So in regards to the causes of Cuba's protests, I think it's multivariable. Of course, the sanctions do have an effect on Cuba's economics, as I believe I saw this on Wikipedia. Most of this stuff is from Wikipedia. There was this poll given, or basically asked a bunch of economists if they thought that the sanctions had a negative effect on Cuba's economy, and 99% of them either strongly agreed or mostly agreed, with the other 1% being I don't know. Okay, so this is a no-brainer. There's been countless studies from the United States as well as from Cuba, the government itself, saying that there's a lot of value that is being lost because of these sanctions. Now, what are the other variables? Because I said that what led to the protests is multivariable, is that on top of the sanctions was also already COVID-19. And one of the larger industries in Cuba is tourism. And so with COVID-19 and cases right now for Cuba spiking, their tourism industry has been fucked. And so then they're not really earning a lot of money from their main industries. And when it comes to, and because of that, that also affects their employment. their ability to buy food or to sell things like that. And yeah, it's just like a big fucked up situation. Now, when it does come to sanctions, however, for the most part, sanctions don't work. And this is just like if you were to take all the sanctions that have been done throughout history and link them or like ask, okay, did these sanctions accomplish its goal, which is applying pressure to a country in order to get them to do something in exchange for removing the sanctions, things like that? Most of the time, the other country does not do the reforms for a multitude of reasons. And so then really though, what I'm really concerned about is not that like whether or not sanctions are good or bad, but what makes them work and what makes them not work. And we kind of have an idea of why that happens, and I could definitely go a bit deeper into how that relates to in the context of, say, Cuba. Now, like, there's a big problem with the sanctions debate, though, is that like a lot of people will say that like if you look at the data, they don't work. However, in the context of politics, though, that's when it becomes important, because the reasons as to why the United States even put the sanctions onto Cuba is because Cuba nationalized a lot of U.S. businesses, and even after the Soviet Union fell, they're still kept on this Soviet-style socialism or this state-run economy, and it's a total mess. It seems like to me, even
What
though
a
I
mess.
would try. I know I'm rambling on. Okay, I'm gonna get around to it. I would say that like the sanctions and Cuba's politics are independent from each other, but they do affect each other. I would like to see that the sanctions are removed, but I would also like to see Cuba reform its governance.
Yeah. So, how would you go about that? That would be like the general question, because I think we all want to have Cuba be more democratic and or like socially like liberated,
Whoa.
like that kind of stuff, or like economically like liberated. That's what I mean. Um, so I think that's like kind of important. But how would you go about it? Because that's like when I hear this question, I genuinely think like, well, Cuba is next to a really big player, right? The US. They are kind of scared, which is like justified for them. Also, like they had like in the past, they had like plans to make like Cuba a state or something along those lines. You have like what's it called, the Monroe doctrine, that basically whatever the US does within in the whole of America, they decide, right? So, and they don't like that shit, obviously. So how would you go to make them more aligned?
Okay, I would like to address this because one chatter in my chat said trade. Okay, this idea is that
Huggers.
when we trade with other countries, it leads to some GDP increases, and with that, you have a population that becomes a lot more open-minded. They want to vote because now they have more money, they have more say, things like that. Okay, that's kind of the logic, and that then leads to the liberalization of the economy, then the liberalization of governance. The problem with Cuba, though, and its politics is that it's very stubborn. Not only is it authoritarian, but it kind of has, I would say, it wants to continue this legacy of the revolution, of the Castros, and they want to continue this style of governance and economics from Soviet-style socialism. And because of that, trade with that country becomes very problematic. Well, why? Because we wouldn't necessarily be setting up businesses in that country because we can't. They're just going to get nationalized. In Cuba, apparently, it is illegal to own a factory, and so then like being able to conduct like business operations in Cuba is very problematic. And so then, it, I don't know if trade is going to be the solution to I guess like Cuba being a democracy. Though what I think is better is to like take what is our situation now. And the situation now is that there's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of people in Cuba who are unsatisfied. And the thing is that in the past, Cuba has liberalized its economy. They did so once when the Soviet Union fell, and because of that, they lost a lot of their subsidies, a lot of trade between Cuba and the Soviet Union. That all disappeared. That led to a recession, and they had to do some liberalization. And I think already Cuba is undergoing these changes because it knows. I think it does know that it can't continue what it's doing right now. Other socialist states such as Vietnam, they have gone to a market economy. A lot of the Eastern European countries that had like this Soviet style socialism because they were under the Soviet Union, they reformed. And so then like I think it's more so like of a matter of time. And Fidel Castro already like he retired. It's his brother Raul who was like who came into power. Like they're moving, but I think what's going on is that on top of the crisis is that they've moved either too slow, and they have to deal with COVID, and that's what's making people really anxious and really angry. I would like to hope that the government realizes that its people want something different and that they respect that.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
seems
Elysium, go ahead.
it seems like that is actually exactly what's happening, right? Like as the Castros are transitioning out,
Hey, thanks
they're
for the like, Kyle.
recognizing that the country needs to change. It seems to be a lot of the rhetoric that they're giving. And they seem to be making moves to liberalize the economy and allow for private businesses. Wouldn't that kind of support that trade is going to be like the perfect opening here?
Trade would be the perfect opening. So then like what's really scary, I guess, like in this situation of geopolitics is that you don't know what the other person is going to do. So you kind of refrain from your own actions so that you don't know if like they're going to liberalize, but to what point. Are they going to still want to continue this legacy of the revolution, and or are they just going to like liberalize it a little bit, like just to appease the population and say like, okay, we did something, stop being angry, and they're like, okay, yeah, we stopped being angry and things like that. So then
I don't think anyone thinks communism is a real thing anymore. People give a lot of lip service to it, but there's no one that's like trying to actually continue the revolution anymore. I think that age is completely past. And since like the whole Cold War,
have you seen
with communism? Well,
just kidding.
As the Cold War with communism has like quieted down and kind of moved on, all these old relationships can, I think, have a fresh start. I don't like, so yes, we can talk about like to what degree would Cuba be willing to like liberalize its economy, but the only way to do that or to like to have influence that discussion is to open up diplomatic talks with them and you know be like, hey, Cuba, this is the future we want with you. We want to talk about how much you can liberalize, how much are you willing to liberalize, what sectors, like how can we work with you to liberalize these sectors in beneficial ways for both countries to like allow trade. Like the only way you're going to be involved in what the Cuban government's going to do is by being willing to talk to them right now, right?
Yeah, and I think that's already happening in that you have the executive since Obama, though Trump wasn't that really open to that idea of opening diplomatic ties. Obama was the first president in many decades to visit that country and to have like some talks, and things have been opening up. But then I think no, even under the Biden administration, it's just that like on top of like, because the United States itself is dealing with a COVID-19 crisis, that a lot of its priorities when it comes to foreign policy has kind of been pushed aside, made for later. But I digress. So then I do think there is an opportunity when you're looking at public opinion, when you're also looking at trends of like what the executives kind of want to do. But I think a major problem for the United States on the United States' part, or not a problem, more of a roadblock, is Congress, because it just seems like Congress does not want to remove that embargo. And I think that just has to do with a lot of Americans in the United States who were from Cuba, but then they left because they were like they didn't like Cuba, and so then that's like a huge voting block for Democrats, Hispanics, and then I don't think I have to like explain much of the dynamics between as to why Republicans don't want to like get rid of the embargo for Cuba.
A lot of the like economic dissidents that fled to America that I'm aware of favor like the Republican side, because they were the ones that want to be tough on the regime in the Cold War era and stuff. But I feel like with the Cold War not being relevant to American geopolitics for a while, or okay, wait, let's rephrase that. With Cuba not being super relevant to American geopolitics for quite some time, like the sentiments have really died down. And like when Obama opened up, there was like I really remember this well because I thought it was really interesting at the time. You know, Obama was opening up relations with Cuba. He was nailing the Iran nuclear deal, and there was like a sentiment of like, hey, a lot of this old stuff we have, like, there's a feeling that we can open a lot of these things, those relationships back up, and that was a really good thing. I think that sentiment is still there, and Biden could easily tap into it if he wanted to, and Congress could.
I honestly don't know. I feel like Trump going back on the Iran deal and then also on the Cuban diplomatic opening is it sets a very, very bad precedent for U.S. foreign policy, where when you finally have a president that that does exactly those things, you know what? Maybe in 4 years it'll all go to shit. Like, because you were talking, and you're right, that obviously a company that wants to invest in Cuba has to worry about maybe the government radicalizes instead of opening up. But the same can be said of the U.S. if Cuba is considering it as a trade partner, right? Does Cuba know that that a regime change, or well, a presidential change, will cause lasting harm after it opens up to possibilities? I feel in some way the trust has been broken, and we were on the right path for establishing diplomatic ties and trade ties, and I agree with both of you that would have been probably the best way to continue engaging with the country and help it liberalize in a healthy way. But since we went back on it, it's rough. Biden's now going to go to the Cuban government and going to have to say, well, you know what, mistakes were made, but this time it's going to be all right. Yeah. And that's not a really good. It's hard to trust someone who's betrayed you. I imagine that a lot of Iranians and Cubans felt betrayed by Trump's going back on diplomatic ties.
Yeah, and on top of that, we could just tell from the Cuban government's responses to the protests when they were blaming the United States, saying that it was the United States doing operations on Twitter that was spreading all this stuff that is like causing this, that like they probably don't really have a favorable view of the United States, though it has been improving. I admit that. Another point I think is that if it's not going to be like directly because of this Cold War sentiment, then it's being used, and I think that's what's happening. I think what's happening is that this idea of like continuing the revolution and continuing to this kind of economics of social Soviet style socialism, because most of the industry in Cuba is government run. Most of the employees, or like people who are working there, are employed by the government. Economic liberalization would be a huge detriment to its government, and the people who are, well, guess what, in power are, well, the people in government. And I think that would be one reason as to why the Cuban government would want to continue this this revolution, even if it's just for the name of its sake. I would say that it's like a means to an end, and the end is to continue the status quo of them being in power.
I like generally I don't think that Cuba wants to align with the US, even if you were to have like more trade and that kind of stuff. Like when you were saying like earlier on, Chow, you were saying like you were talking about like the fact that they blame the US. I assume that there's still like a big part of the population that in some way believes in like the revolution, because have been like supported by Russia as well. So that's like one side. Have been like supported by Russia as well. So that's like one side they want to keep friendly as well. And I think they also want to do that because of like military, like that they are protected, right? So
Yeah,
Russia's
and Venezuela as well.
Okay.
Elysium,
What about Russia?
Russia has
I don't know. I was gonna say Russia's not militarily gonna be able to protect Cuba. But I don't know anything
No,
about
but
their
they
military
have,
relationship
like-
right now, so I just stopped.
I think they did the same thing that the US sometimes do, where they basically do an arms contract, and they provide arms for that regime. So it's not like they actually like go in there and like fight for the Cubans or stuff like that, but they help to prop up the regime itself.
There. Okay, something from before, addressing like the instability of U.S. diplomacy. So, the Iran deal is a really good example of that for sure. How going like thrashing on diplomatic offers is really bad. I don't know if like normalizing trade relations with a country, why that's like in the process, then going back and forth on that, and that like being a process is nearly the same degree of bad as the Iran deal. But
Well,
okay,
it's similar because we're talking about two countries that that suffer from sanctions. The sanctions directly impact quality of life, and people die from sanctions in unnecessary deaths and things like that. So I think it's a fair analogy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not saying like it's a horrible analogy. I'm just saying I think there's a lot more wiggle room in normalizing trade relations with someone than making like a nuclear deal and then scrapping it because political points.
Sure.
And in that, every time America talks about foreign policy stuff for the press release, we all harp on the like making a rules-based order for the world, and I think that is actually really important when it comes to sanctions. If we can set our sanction system up, like if a country does X action, it is going to receive Y sanction, and setting like a rules-based system for how we're going to interact with bad states allows for like predictability and consistency in that foreign policy, which I think would go a long way to address like normalizing relations. So I'm like, hey, I agree, we should probably repeal a lot of this embargo. Probably not really necessary right now, but we can say if you're going to prevent freedom of assembly or political freedom or religious freedom of these things, we're going to respond in this predictable way. And like I feel like that gives you a lot of ability to be consistent in situations with this and allows like a lot of standardization.
I'm glad you got back there because I actually wanted to respond to some of what Senpai said earlier about the embargo and and you bringing it back is perfect for me. And then so I can respond to you too. But basically, the problem is like, what are we trying to accomplish with an embargo, right? So Senpai talked about the success or lack thereof of sanctions and embargoes. I think there are 3 types of intentions with sanctions from like the research I did. You've got sanctions to soften a target leading up to a war. A good example is Iraq in the recent war. The U.S. imposed sanctions, and then like I don't remember how long later it started an invasion. You hurt the economy, and that's going to have an indirect effect on the military and the capacity to respond. They're going to have less oil. Obviously, well, not that big of a problem in the Middle East, but you know what I mean. You have sanctions, and then you have. Then you have two sanctions with the same goal, but that are justified differently. And I think those are the sanctions we're discussing here. You've got sanctions as a way of, they're both with the goal of changing internal policy or regime in a targeted country. But sometimes they're presented in a way where you're going to hold I would say you're holding the population hostage. So sometimes when you hear people talk about North Korea, they're like, look at all the people who are going to starve because of you, Kim Jong-un. We're holding your population hostage to make you change your policies, your regime. And the other approach, which is the one that's more commonly justified, for example, there are multiple speeches by Mike Pompeo, another guy, I forgot his name, a guy who worked for the NSA. When they speak to Congress about sanctions, they usually justify it as hoping that they'll piss off the people in the country enough that they start a revolution themselves. Basically coercing the population into a regime change. The thing is, and I fully agree with Senpai, just from looking at the history, sanctions aren't very effective. If we were talking about Cuba, which we are, the sanctions have been there since the late 50s, 60s. They haven't really made the regime, and it's not just the regime. To a certain extent, it's the regime being stubborn, but I just don't know about their effectiveness. There's a study from the 1980s by the Peterson Institute for International Economics suggesting that sanctions only work about 30% or so of the time, which, when you consider the very real human damage they do, I don't think that success rate is make them look very good in general as a tool. And I'm very interested. Senpai said that he would like to explore the reasons why sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I'd be very interested in like gain a better understanding of what are the situations where they did work. Yeah, sorry, you want to respond?
Okay, so the best example would be South Africa. The entire world put sanctions onto that country because of apartheid, and they ended apartheid under that pressure. And so then what's really important when it comes to sanctions and its effectiveness is making sure that when you're doing sanctions, that there are no loopholes. So then when it comes to like Cuba, it's only the United States that has this embargo. No other country really treats Cuba the way that the United States does. In fact, there have been like multiple, I think like actually for a very long time, I don't know how many years, but for a very long time, the United Nations General Assembly has passed a resolution to get the United States to end its embargo. And like a few countries abstained, and only 2 countries go against that. That's Israel and the United States. And like every other country has really like normal trade relations, and they have they allowed their people to go to that country for tourism. Not the United States. The United States does not allow that. But like even when other countries do allow trade between Cuba and themselves, is that like a lot of times it's that the United States would be like, hey, if you do this, then you're going to face some consequences from us. And so then that puts pressure on them. And then not a lot of companies that there are not a lot of companies that are multinational in the world that are not US based. And so then like one could say that like, yeah, it's only US
you have to qualify a lot there, but
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
that's
so
what I
then,
was gonna say. Like, if only U.S.-based companies suffer from it, then I mean that's nearly every single company that.
Exactly. So then, like, that's I can see how some people will say only U.S.-based companies are affected by this. Okay, like a German company could do something, but
Yeah,
then
and
guess
then you're
what? There are
banned
not a
from
lot
trade.
of there are not a lot of multinationals that are German.
Yeah, you're like banned from
they
trade in
do
the
exist,
U.S.
but I'm pretty sure like above 90% of multinational companies are U.S. based because that's just how.
Well, on
US
paper,
strong.
they are either Irish or Dutch. Yeah, that's something. No, sorry. Sorry for the interruption. Name?
No. I fully agree with Senpai, and I just want to add there's because we were talking about there's like the embargo, but then there's supplementary illegal sanctions, right? There's the crap. I had the name of the law. There's like two specific laws that are. That make business in Cuba for multinational corporations really complicated. One of them, ironically, if we're talking about the expropriation of U.S. assets in when the communist regime rose to power, ironically got passed in 1996, which obviously is 40 years after the regime took place. And it's a law that allows the U.S. to sue companies that have any kind of economic activity on land or property that has been expropriated. That seems like it sucks. Like I'm not against property rights. I'm not going to go full commie here, but 40 years after that shit happened, like. I don't know of any country that's ever did real reparations for any kind of expropriation or seizure of property in those kinds of situations. Which doesn't mean those discussions can't be had, but yeah.
What bill are you referring to again? Sorry.
Okay, let me find the exact name. I need to alt tab to some article. Oh yeah, the Helms-Burton Act, passed by the U.S. Congress in 1996, provides for legal action, sanctions, and travel restrictions for non-U.S. companies and their executives dealing in the assets of U.S.-owned property confiscated after Cuba's 1959 revolution. So that's one of several such laws and measures that that will create like a strong chilling effect. That's something I would say, like also because earlier we were talking about how trade would be creating trade relations would be great, and obviously like the U.S. is right next to Cuba. You should be trade partners, right? You can't have the sanctions and develop trade at the same time, right? You need to make a show of good faith and pull down those laws. This 1996 law, as far as I can tell, it was no longer it was still written in law, but it was no longer applied during Obama's presidency. That's notably one of the things he did to strengthen diplomatic ties. And as a compromise, but it still was there, which meant that once Trump was back in power, well, not back, but once Trump was in power, Mike Pompeo, for example, started immediately threatening prosecuting under this law and things like that.
So
and if I recall correctly, that's an act, correct? So that was passed under Congress. So
yes,
then
it's an
Congress
act.
It would be Congress that has to appeal that.
Yes,
repeal that if we want to get rid of it completely, which I think calls back to me mentioning before that one of the major roadblocks to getting rid of the embargo, which the embargo on Cuba is a multitude of things from the executive and the legislative branch, and it's like a lot of separate things such as that act, for example. Yeah, Congress is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, but Congress represents their constituents, right? So I'm like, if you want to get any foreign policy change, you have to change the public sentiment on it, right? And then you'd expect Congress to follow.
Yeah,
or like, it just depends on what style you're going with. I mean, you could do it top down, you could do bottom up, either way. But like, I mean, if we would advocate for either application of pressure, top or bottom, to get a policy change here, right?
Well, and that's rough, right? You're dealing with the legacy of half a century of Cold War propaganda. In recent times, whenever embargoes are spoken of, it's really only mostly, honestly, like really further leftists who will be like, embargoes actually kill. Like the political language is always, we're gonna do things to a regime, when in reality those measures do things to the population. There's a sort of like double speak in political communication.
Super good things. Yes. Okay. So first, I want to make sure we're talking about the same one. The Helms-Burton Act stuff. A frustrating thing when talking about like relationship with Cuba is we have like a lot of historical shit that go on that like contribute to the dumb historical shit of why it is perpetuated. So like there were 2 civilian private planes that got shot down, tourist planes if I remember correctly, that spurred the passage of that act. So like it wasn't trying to like go back to a 40-year-old reparations of American businesses that had been like stolen stuff. It was like current geopolitics adding on to a past situation. And like similarly, and half of these things in the history of the Cuba stuff, because there already is such a massive embargo, are more like political posturing than anything else. So like if we look at Biden's current sanctions that he applied on Cuba in response to their crackdown on their protesters, these are like political posturing sanctions. Anyone that was sanctioned by Biden was already under more oppressive economic sanctions from these past acts. So like nothing in that equation really changed. But sorry. Okay, we got 2 points. One, there's a complicated history. Small conflicts go back to the original thing and escalate that political situation. A lot of stuff for like political posturing. The transition that I think would be really nice is the Biden style sanctions. Something that I think we've employed more and more against Russia is, instead of targeting broad sanctions, targeting specific individuals with sanctions. So Biden's response sanctions are targeting I can't remember the people, like the leader of the military, the people who are giving out commands, and their subordinates individually. So if we could repeal the broad embargo sanctions and have a rules based, if you're going to perform X actions, you yourself and your subordinates are going to suffer, not necessarily your general population. I feel like that has a lot more deterrent potential. And then I definitely agree before, if we're going for like a broad sanction thing, it has to be done as a collective to be effective. I guess, and in that, I'm curious how you feel on the 2 points of like, there have been continual problems between the relationship with Cuba that then escalates into political posturing in these things. And then if we just sanctioned individuals who we deemed were bad actors, would that be better than the embargo? Or like, would you be okay with that in replace of the embargo?
Okay, I'd like to respond. So you've mentioned a couple of times this rule-based trading, or when it comes to the sanctions. I think that's kind of already being accomplished under the WTO. And like most of the international community says that the embargo that is like being given by the United States is like bad, and it's some will actually say that it's illegal because you're violating some sort of norms. But then like when it comes to international relations, sometimes the powerful get to do whatever they kind of want, right? Now, like when it comes to smart sanctions, I like smart sanctions better than broad sanctions when it comes to like it as a means, or like when it comes to I guess like the morality or the philosophy of it, because as you said, like you're not targeting a group of people who really don't have any control. But then like as you kind of said before, that in one way in order to change the governance or the government is by getting to change the minds of the people. But then even when you consider that like smart sanctions and sanctions are like different in who they target and what they want to do, etc., etc., and its effects, it doesn't necessarily lead to different results. So, as from the same kinds of studies, when it comes to sanctions, smart sanctions aren't effective as well. And the reason being is that, well, guess what? They're small, and because they're small and they're targeted, then there's still like a lot of workarounds, and like a lot of the assets that are being frozen, well, like they could just sit there and like people don't really need them, uh, et cetera, et cetera. So then when it comes to like effectiveness, not even smart sanctions are good.
I
Oh,
want to ask you a question, like Elysium, like because I don't know like if I want to take your approach or not, but like when we look at like Russia, right, they have like these rich oligarchs that are moving like basically the money out of their own country and investing it in like capital and in Europe and stuff like that, and they try to do kind of stuff like how effective would those smart sanctions be? It like compared to like Cuba, like I don't
against
see
a
like
broad embargo. Is that what you're
no
asking?
no the the solution that you propose, like how would that be successful compared to like these other countries where they generally have like different different way. It's like it's actually affecting them, but I'm not sure if like a lot of Cubanese like officials go outside of their state and doing stuff abroad. I'm
Yeah.
not even quite sure if that happens a lot, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I follow. I So I guess there's like 2 points. You're making it a personal pain instead of a public pain, and you're adding risk and you're isolating someone. Sure. So if you're gonna be a bad global actor, you are isolating yourself to like the place that you have power. And if you ever lose that, or if you ever like want to diversify your assets, there's a lot of risk involved in that. I don't know about the effectiveness. That'd be interesting to look into, and well, I got follow up for that we can get to. So I could definitely concede that like if this turns out to not be effective, then maybe we need to find an alternative. But I would prefer putting the brunt of the weight on geopolitical change on the economic liberalization side, and allowing the incremental change there as we get closer ties with a country, than trying to get the brunt of the political change through punishing someone. Does that make sense? So I could see how maybe the sanctions aren't like super effective at getting what we want, but perhaps they allow us to still target bad actors while economically liberalizing a country that allows that change to come as we would want it to over time.
Does anybody wants to respond? Name maybe?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm responding directly to what she said. I also noted I couldn't find the specifics of how that worked out, but there are U.S. companies actually operating in Cuba. The 2 examples I found were airlines. Obviously, airports have like special legal status. They're international ground, etc. But somehow they're and it was also under Obama. Like once again, when the restrictions were being lifted. But there are. I don't know. I couldn't find the specifics. I tried to look really hard for it, but like how hard it is to run a business in Cuba. All I could find was that. Bigger privately owned businesses are sort of coerced to be cooperatives. I found some articles about that, but I couldn't find how any specifics on how well a multinational corporation that has its own like power structure, how can it trade and operate in Cuba, which somehow it did for a while. So. Yeah, but that's kind of tangential, I guess. That's not like a general thing. It's just I don't know if you guys have saw anything on that subject, like how.
I'm not sure what that question is.
Well, yeah, it's not a
Like,
question.
how would a large
Please.
company operate? I mean, they'd have to work that out.
Well, how did they operate historically? Did you guys manage to see any info on that subject? How Cuba authorized the operation and like what restrictions or non-restrictions were placed, etc.
No, not specifically.
It's
But then like I already mentioned this before, but like apparently you can't own a factory in Cuba.
Yeah.
No,
That's
okay.
illegal.
Let me.
So then like
okay.
that's really like the amount that I know, and then that's that's like one of the reasons.
But I think these things have like super easy potential to change, because one of the things when Obama did start to normalize relations, they had like plans to allow
thanks for the
more
follow,
private
Jen
business.
Caleb.
And they did have plans, and they did like open up more sections of their economy to be like privately owned in preparation for these things internally too. And they were definitely willing to set up ways for companies to work with the country. Like I think under Obama, the moves that were being made were very clear that it was going to be a liberalized economy.
A mixed economy, right? A strong.
Yeah, a mix. Yes. I mean, yeah, we would be incrementally moving towards a more liberal economy, and it would be a mixed economy for foreign businesses for sure. And like I don't know, I have great confidence in statesmen being able to work out how that's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that time past, or can it still?
No, I
Can it
definitely
still happen?
definitely think it can still happen. I mean, even if not more so, if you show that the populace is upset with the economic conditions, and to like, I mean, I think that like reinforces being isolated is bad, and going forward, you want to be more integrated with the rest of the world.
Like the problem is that the whiplashing of like the US, like with the Trump, right? It doesn't like bode like
I don't
maybe like
think,
a good prospect for Cuba.
I agree for sure, but I don't think Trump backed out of like any formal big agreements like he did with the Iran deal. I think this was just the sentiment and like the talks that were building up, and then when Trump came into power, he kind of said, "No, fuck the talks. We want like all these things, and if we don't get every single one of them, we're out." And then they're kind of like, "Okay, fuck you," and then the talks stopped. Is my understanding of the situation. I don't think like any agreed upon documents were like actually backed out of, just the direction that we were heading.
So they actually did pass.
I kind of have a problem with how he was phrasing that.
There's like specific where is that tab? There's like specific okay, there's like this website. Where is it? Oh yeah, U.S. Department of Treasury. The U.S. Department of Treasury has a specific list of changes to Cuba sanctions with fact sheets accompanying them. There was a reinforcement of sanctions in June 2019, in September 2019, and September 2020. Those are direct policy changes that Trump enacted. Those aren't just like posturing in the sense of like speeches and aggressive rhetoric.
Yes, I totally agree. But also Cuba allowing more private sector businesses within their own economy was a huge change on their side too. So like while both people are coming to the table, both are going to be internally making changes that are going to allow for cooperation in the future. And then going back on that is saying, yeah, no, never mind, you go back on these sanction lists, you go back as a terrorist state, blah, blah, whatever, and like putting them back in how your mentality to each other is. But that there wasn't like a agreed upon deal like the Iran deal that then we scrapped. Does that make sense?
Sure. There wasn't an explicit deal. It was a progressive loosening and of sanctions and regulations that was based on the goodwill of both parties. And I think we have to go back to what Senpai was saying about internal political will in the U.S. Like at the end of the day, as long as Congress acts, for example, aren't repealed, it will depend on the executive branch whether they choose to apply them or not, and that's
true.
And so there would need to be real political will internally in the U.S. to change some of those fundamental acts and laws in order to create a situation where Cuba could trust a U.S. president not to go back on the process that's engaged, right?
On the direction that's headed.
And,
Yeah, for sure.
I think another thing that we also have to realize is that the political will of Cuba is also at play here, because a lot of the sentiments aren't really going to change within the United States, unless Cuba changes. And not even if Cuba changes, that might not necessarily change the United States, because like when it comes to foreign policy, like I do agree, and I do have evidence to show that public opinion does positively correlate with policies being more likely to pass. Okay. But when it comes to specifically like foreign policy, I could guarantee you that like that likelihood decreases, because a lot of people are like either really ignorant of foreign policy, or they really just like outright don't care. And then like because of that, then what happens is that it becomes really polarized, in that politicians, congressmen, then take the most extreme positions on foreign policy, because then what they want to do is they want to attract the people who are going to
care
be
about it, yeah.
voting on that foreign policy. Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that like I had a problem with kind of like comparing this with the Iran deal. And while I do agree that what the United States did with the Iran deal is a lot more severe in cutting, or like in going back on our word, than what the United States did to Cuba, that's not going to, I don't think that's going to change like how the Cuban government or how Cubans feel about the United States doing stuff, because like it just so happens that, and I think this is just like kind of like a human nature thing, that like it doesn't matter about like really the severity of things, or no, it does matter what the severity of things, but it's not as big of a deal as like what the United States did do. And then like a lot of the times Cubans aren't going to like think about this. The Cuban government or Cuban politicians aren't going to think, oh, well, like what the United States did with Iran, like that's a lot more severe. We ought to be grateful. And like we shouldn't, like, no, that's not how like decision making works.
True.
Or like
Okay.
that's not how the
That's
human
fair.
brain works. So then like
Yeah, I agree.
I don't like that.
And let's be fair, like in the past, like the US, again, I already stated this, but the US wanted to incorporate Cuba. They had like propped up like
We're talking like 1860s. No one gets a
yeah, but people will drag all kinds of stupid shit into the
Okay.
political sphere, and they spin a narrative, and I would.
But
That
you
would
know what
probably
the
be a
Cubans are
narrative
going to
that
care
would be
about?
spun.
They're going to care
impression-
about having food and homes and cars and the internet and being able to publicly assemble and have political parties and religious freedom. It's like
Yes.
I feel like all these things can fall in line so easily once you make political moves. What do you mean?
No,
People aren't sitting there going, "I must protect the communist
I-
revolution in Cuba." They don't give a fuck. They want the
yes, they
grocery
do.
store to
There were
actually have
pro-government
food.
protests. There
Yeah.
were pro-government protests in Cuba. In like, what is it called? The July 11th protests? Yes,
Yeah.
there were pro-government protests.
Also, I think you're underestimating just how much resentment there is over the fact that the
Sure.
U.S. supported Batista and but like Batista's authoritarian reign over Cuba. Like those kinds of things
Propaganda.
leave long lasting
I'm not
marks.
expecting those
and
things to go
propaganda,
away.
Yeah.
It's just I think people will care more about having common goods, like basic goods, consumer goods, than like America's position on communism, even or supporting dictators of the past and stuff. Like I don't know. I feel like I'll move the fuck on.
Once we get there where people have a better quality of life, I 100% agree. Yeah, but
Or,
but
what
like.
you're saying.
But like, because right now earlier we were saying that it requires political will within the U.S. and Senpai said that it requires political will also within Cuba. Like both need to align, and
I don't know about that. Well, okay, yes, I understand what you're saying.
No.
Yeah, for the embargo side in the beginning of this process, I don't think it matters. I think Cuba can have whatever sentiment it wants, and it looks like
of course,
it's going to want to be a trading partner, even if it thinks we're capitalist fucking evil. And so if we have that political movement in America to begin the process, I think the rest has a good likelihood of following. It might take time, and there's obviously going to be complications and stuff. But like, I don't understand how the first step isn't to normalize relations and start trading and open up a country to the rest of the world to become more international.
I know. I agree
Well,
with
okay,
that.
I'm not necessarily saying that that's not the first step. I would say that's like one of the major steps that what the United States could do. But hey, guess what? The name of this podcast is it's a Lib Praxis. Oh, there's the word
Yeah.
praxis there. So then, like, just thinking about the challenges and to me, okay, to me, my question is not what can we do. It's more so like what is our current situation now, and what are our feasible options, and like what does the roadmap map look like. So then like a lot of the times is like, okay, well, when it comes to say like climate change, well, a step to fixing climate change is to just like pour $1 trillion into like solar panel companies and things like that. It's like, yeah, sure, it's a great step, but like good luck trying to get Congress to pass that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But I think there is a very prevailing general opinion that the embargo is either not necessary or not beneficial, and can be removed. I don't know many people who like coming into any discussion on Cuba are like, holy fuck, we need to keep this embargo in. Like, there doesn't seem to be much need for it.
In those spaces because you're on this podcast.
Okay,
then like
saying
okay,
important, relevant. Yeah,
I could back you up here because there have been public opinion polls that come out that Americans, for the most part, don't think that it is necessary. The majority of them, and that's like 60%. So there is public opinion support for getting rid of the embargo. But I think what people don't really understand is that in order to get that policy passed for their Congress or their congressmen to do stuff, well, they have to you have to lobby them, or like you have to make phone calls, you have to send emails, like you actually have to get them convinced. And guess what? Americans don't do that. This is especially a foreign policy matter. So then like basically what I'm just doing is I'm being a doomer realist. Okay. But definitely, I think what the executive branch itself can do and what the Cuban government can do unilaterally, though I don't think there's a lot of political will from the Cuban government to do what I'm about to say. So I'm kind of contradicting myself. Is that like what the Biden administration can do is decrease its restrictions on Cuba of what it can do and try to get Cuba to like give some things back. So then it's like, hey, we're going to like open up relationships. We're going to have communication. You're going to do something, and we're going to do something, and we're going to go back and forth, things like that. I just don't think the Cuban government is open to that from the Biden administration side. But what I do think the Cuban government will do is they will have to respond to the protests, and
wait,
that's what happened. That's what happened in history. That's what happened in history. I think that's what's going to happen.
Before we move it on, I like. Why don't you think the Cuban government would be willing to do that?
So I already mentioned this before that like they had a pretty negative response when it came to the protest and putting the blame on the U.S. government, which is misinformation. And it's this idea that they want to continue having power and like.
Hey, let me rephrase it this way.
Okay.
I got two questions. We'll do one at a time. If they were willing to do this with Obama, why do you think they would be unwilling to do it with Biden?
Okay, so then because what they're doing is different. So Obama was like Obama still had a lot of restrictions on. So then what he did was he allowed people couldn't even go there for tourism. you had to be authorized. And like he visited them, and like they had talks and stuff like that. But for the most part, not much changed.
Yes, the embargo is not lifted yet.
Okay.
But we are making steps on both sides to get to
yes,
that outcome.
Yes. But like, okay, so here's the thing: is that like, so what I'm saying is not necessarily what the Cuban government has to do is not like opening up relations to the Biden administration. What I said before, and let me clarify, is I don't think the Cuban government is going to succumb to pressure from the Biden administration. Or to be more specific, I think they are going to feel more pressured from the protests than from the Biden administration.
Well,
And the reason,
sure.
and I think the reason why is because of relationships before, but also when it comes to like
the protests aren't trying to say end the U.S. embargo. They're just saying, "Fuck, dude, we want normal goods in our stores."
Yes. Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, is that what the protests have done in the past, and what I think they're going to do in the future, and you've kind of already agreed with this, if I recall correctly, is that the Cuban economy is going to be a lot more liberalized. Correct?
Maybe. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
All right. And I think that if the Cuban government is going to make steps towards making their economy more liberalized, as well as their government more liberalized, then this would give more room for the Biden administration to approach Cuba in order to get what the United States can do. Okay, so that's kind of how I'm piecing it together, and like it.
Okay, actually, okay, I think I understand. You're saying that
I
even
think
if
the first step isn't going to come from the United States. It's going to come from Cuba. All
so you think the current political unrest in Cuba is going to have these liberalizing effects more so than anything else?
Absolutely. And and this is also in consideration of the very major high hurdles that the United States has to do. Okay, and because Cuba is in the middle of unrest and as well as pressure from the public, they are more likely to do stuff first than what the United States is doing. Okay, there is more political will for change from Cuba than there is political will of change for the United States.
Okay.
And
the American side is much more apathetic, yeah.
Okay, yes. And because of that, then I think it is a lot more important to then focus on the situation in Cuba than to like at least like not focus. I think if we're going to be kind of like making predictions about the future or what is the most realistic path towards this problem, then we should be looking at Cuba first. But this is not to say that doing stuff in the United States is for naught.
Yeah. Okay. Name. Do you want to respond?
I was actually wondering the opposite, speculating that perhaps the fact that this is a period of unrest and instability for the country might make them, in a sense, even paranoid about loosening up, whether it's to influence, what's perceived as influence by the U.S. government. I could see it having honestly the opposite effect. Obviously, this is just speculation. We can't predict the future, but I wouldn't be so sure that it means that there's necessarily strong political will for opening up. I could see it go either way, honestly, because I'm trying to think of it like in the context of all the recent history that we talked about. Obama opening up, Trump closing up again, and now there's Biden, who's open to reaching out, and obviously was vice president under Obama, is tied to all that. But like you said, also the U.S. citizens, even if they're in favor of it, being in favor isn't the same as there being political will. It's not an issue people will vote on for the most part. Yeah, which is what actually matters. Cubans seem, in the polls I could look at, seem to be in favor of like like the mixed economy type of reform of like opening it up partially while still maintaining government protection of its activities and certain sectors. But I don't know how like unrest and the between the protests and the crackdowns, what will be the outcome of all that in the end. It seems hard to predict, I would say.
For sure. Well, okay, so one element that I wanted to get to about this, I think a lot of the situation has less to do with any like political stuff going on and more to do with COVID, and the effects that COVID has had on Cuba's economy. And we talked about this before. I think coming out of COVID, there's a good chance that you see like, hey, maybe a strict tourism economy has some more weaknesses than we were acknowledging before. And they're like, I feel like this could open up a lot of room for like, hey, maybe we do, want to have some more economic integration so we are not as vulnerable if, increasingly calamitous things happen that cut us off from the rest of the world. Like I feel like, so I can understand you saying it could go either way, but I feel like there's a lot more room for the relations to edge closer to wanting to trade and wanting to be involved with the rest of the world than not, if that makes any sense.
I don't think the United States is going to budge first. Okay, even if Congress wasn't an issue,
sure.
Typically when it comes to international relations between United States and another country, it's always the other country that has to make the concessions. So then Trump didn't do this. He did a really fucking poor job when it came to North Korea. Like the meeting, like having a meeting before having any concessions, and then therefore that kind of fucked up the meeting because they were talking about stuff, and it was like, well, we didn't make any concessions, so we don't have to do anything. Yes, stuff like that. So then that's typically what happens, is that the United States isn't going to move first unless the other country does something. And usually, if the United States does go first, it is to the detriment of the other country, not in support.
To be fair, like in recent, like with the Biden administration, like this call for like regulations of like certain things, like the international tax thing that he had going on. Like it's like historical what you say, Chow, but maybe that will change a little bit in the future, hopefully. So yeah, but Elysium, you wanted to say something.
No, wait, hey, can you clarify that? I'm not sure what you were referring to there. What international tax? Like corporate minimum tax?
So
okay.
Yeah, so generally speaking, like they had like this 15% like corporate tax rate that they do like international, like that is like pretty historical that America comes forward and say
like America pushing a policy. I see.
So that's pretty historical in that sense. So was it? Yeah, but go ahead.
The only other thing I want to say is I think Biden was pretty clear that like all the foreign policy stuff is kind of on hold politically until like COVID's dealt with. And if America or the world or anything gets its act together with COVID and we like do move on from this sometime in like a year or two from now, and there's a lot more room for Biden to be moving foreign policy and his other initiatives. Like for what Biden's done already, I think he's doing a great job, and I think he's moving really fast. And I think he's got plenty of time to address a lot of things. And I imagine, as we talked about him being the VP under Obama, a lot of the stuff that he has like on the table in the future, I would imagine, are continuation of Obama's policies and plans.
I want to respond to that. I could see though there being not much of an understanding that there, even if there is an understanding, I could just see Cubans being very resentful over the fact that they because they're suffering, right? They really are suffering right now, more so than before. I could see them being at least partially justifiably resentful over the the situation, and the fact that they will be understandably sidelined until like you said, the US gets its own shit together internally. I wouldn't expect anything different from the US. But when your economy is falling down the gutter, and you have an easy target to blame for it, it's very understandable that you're not going to be very understanding of the superpower that is basically holding, what would be the allegory? Well, holding you back in certain ways, right?
Mm-hmm. I could see how they could be resentful and even justifiably so. I guess my two thoughts would be like, there's pretty good, like, look, the embargo was there before COVID and remained there after COVID. Like, there's plenty of predictability there for the government to have responded to. And I think people's resentment, typically like starts to go away once they're holding a nice fancy iPhone and they don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing.
Hot take
Okay.
incoming. All right. I understand what Naaman is saying, that like, yeah, it's understandable if people are gonna hold resentment to the United States for what they did, but really, I think they should be grateful. Why?
Yeah, it's
Because
dumb.
I think they should be grateful because one, Cuba has been trading with the United States, okay, when it comes to food and medicine. And there's been times in history in which Cuba refused to take stuff of food and medicine for I don't know, whatever reason. But in order to buy that stuff, they have to use cash. They can't use credit. And because they can't use credit, they can't take out debt. And a lot of because they can't take out debt when it comes to like getting stuff from the United States, well, you can't run Keynesian economics, the demand side economics, like you can't stimulate the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't do a lot of things without debt. Okay, this world runs on debt. Okay, that's why stocks only go up, is because of debt. But the reason why Cubans and the Cuban government should be grateful of that is because then they can't get affected by debt crises, or they can't run their government and they can't run their economy down the drain because now they have to use the cash that they can. Okay. And what I reference is when Soviet-style economies in Eastern Europe decided to take out debt. They decided to use credit from U.S. banks, and they thought, oh my God, okay, it's just free money. We could use this, and if blah, 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 we'll just think about this later, et cetera, et cetera. And then guess what? Okay, boom, oil shock, okay? OPEC fucks some shit up, okay? Latin American debt crisis. They default on their loans, and then now guess what? Okay, their economy is shit because they have no money. They have no funding. And so then looking back onto history, knowing that Cuba's economy is the way that it is, well, they should be grateful that they don't have to face a debt crisis if it ever came. Okay.
Okay, I don't think I'm comfortable
would not
with
agree
like
with that, but
abuser language.
Yeah, it's kind of that.
We saved them, okay? We saved them from the recessions that they could have been faced. All right.
Is this you going Kobe or something? What's going on here?
Wait. Does Kobe
hey,
have
FBI
these
agent, how are you doing?
these moments? Because like for the most part,
Kobe.
nobody's like
Communist.
Kobe, right?
Communist.
Commie. No, commie. This isn't a commie.
No, that's
This
like
isn't a commie moment. This is a capitalist moment. Okay.
Yeah, that's like neoconservative.
Yeah.
No, actually not neoconservative, because neoconservative is like that. Who hates that really? I think it's just libertarians.
Fiscally responsible conservative.
Yeah.
Right? They generally they hate that, but then again, if Trump is in power,
No. It's not that like okay. So
true.
here's the thing. Okay, I don't hate debt. Okay, I like debt, but I don't think Cuba has the capacity to use that debt in a good way. I think what they're going to do, okay, if they could take out credit, if they could take out debt, what's going to happen is they're going to get the money, they're going to spend it, it's not going to lead to anything, and guess what? Now they have this debt, they have no money, they're going to default on their loans, and going to be like, oh shit, we can't do anything, and then the whole country goes to shit.
Why do you think they're not going to do it? Okay, that's whole step. Never mind. That's fine. It's fine.
I know,
Why do I think so? Because Eastern European countries that had Soviet-style socialism, when they decided to take out debt, guess what? They didn't do anything with it, and then And then like some debt crisis came, and they got affected by it, and they're like, "Holy shit! I didn't know we had to return the money." It's like, "Yeah, you got to return the money." It's like, "Oh shit, we don't got any money." Okay, so guess what? Okay, they took out debt. They didn't do anything with it. In fact, they didn't have any money, and then boom, they have to default in the loans. Okay, that's probably what was going to happen with Cuba. And like, thank God they didn't have any debt, because guess what? All right, they had a stagnant economy right now. But you know what's worse than a stagnant economy? An economy that's going.
I need to respond. Okay.
What the fuck was that?
Just because some states take out debt and don't use it to properly build their infrastructure and their economy doesn't mean that states shouldn't try to do that. Or obviously, with authoritarian governments, it's a crapshoot. Like, either they make the right decisions or they don't, and they're just applied absolutely.
It's an authoritarian government, right?
But like an authoritarian government that makes the right decisions, it'll work out. If they don't make the right decisions, then it'll be a shit show. I don't have but most importantly, the thing is, earlier we were talking about how a lot of this has to do with the fact that the Cuban economy is, as it was opening up, it was mostly focused on tourism. Whereas historically, for example, when Cuba was basically sort of like a U.S. semi-colony, the economy was based on certain specific exports, such as sugar. Yeah.
Guess what Cuba did? Okay, they decided to take U.S.-based sugar companies, and they took their land, they took their businesses, they took their factories, they nationalized it, and then they kicked everybody out without giving them any repayment. Okay, and where does
the expropriation?
It comes from this idea of eminent domain. Okay, states have the ability.
But no one cares about that anymore.
What?
Well, wait.
If the United States government decided to take my house or my business for the public uses, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But the whole idea is that I get repaid for it. Okay, for shared value.
But no one's gonna expropriate companies anymore.
Guess what Cuba did?
Yes, Cuba did, but I want to
and then this idea. Okay, so since Cuba did this in its past, okay, it is then more likely to do it in the future.
No, because it's when communism was relevant to the world, when communism was actual ideology. This
isn't a communist. This isn't a communist thing. This is just an authoritarian thing. Okay, this also happens in right-wing capitalist countries. Okay?
It does.
Right-wing authoritarian. Yes, it does. It does happen there. Okay.
I just want to wait. I just want to scale back the.
How do you think Mobutu was able to get so much money? Okay, not only was he able to exploit resources, but he was also able to exploit funding, as well as already the companies that are already in there. Okay, why do you think foreign direct investment doesn't go to countries that have low stability or authoritarian regimes? Okay, it doesn't matter if they're communist. It doesn't matter if they're communist of Cuba. Okay? Why? Okay. Why? Because it's the fear that country is going to go under, or they're going to nationalize that company without actually giving any repayment. Okay.
Okay. Let name.
Yeah, because I don't disagree with anything you're saying, Senpai. But when I was talking about the sugar export, it was talking about how in relation to what I said before about the current state of the Cuban economy, and that we all agreed that Cuba needs to find more stable sectors to develop in. Like, the expropriation happened. That's and all you saying about the risk aversity, etc., is very true. But now going forward into the future, one of the few ways I could see Cuba developing a more stable economy in the immediate future would be, for example, to once again have export-import ties with the U.S. for certain products like that, and it would be the nationalized, for example, sugar agriculture that was originally developed by U.S. companies, and I kind of feel like if you want to go forward with goodwill, you just have to suck it up. It like Ezium says, it's happened 60.
Okay. So your idea, to U.S. companies having foreign direct investment in Cuba is to tell these U.S. companies, hey, just suck it up. Okay, the past.
No.
Okay?
I'm not saying that.
What are you saying?
No, I said that because I was specifically addressing the what we discussed earlier, which is how the Cuban economy can develop forward. This just goes back to the embargo. Like the Cuban economy developed tourism because literally the first things that are opened up was tourists being able to travel there. But there's not much else that they can do, because earlier we were also saying that Cuba needs to do the first steps in opening up, etc. But Cuba doesn't have many options. Like it can't export sugar to the U.S. If we talk about political will, I doubt like full privatization or retribution will have will have strong legs to stand on for the Cuban people. What they want is a mixed economy, not like a full-on privatization, at least from what I've seen.
Oh yeah, and if they wanted to do something like Vietnam, I'm all for it, and I think that's going to be a lot better when it comes to forming ties between the United States and Cuba. But here's the thing: is that Cuba isn't going to do that. Okay, even though it is like continuing, in time. Oh my God. Okay, yeah, sure. Give me like a 40-year time span. Yeah, that's really relevant to me right now. Okay,
why don't you think Cuba is?
Because they've already said so. Okay, when it comes to like Vietnam has apparently like already had meetings with Cuba and saying like, hey, this is what we did, like you should do this too. And they're like, no, okay. Like why do you think the Cuban government,
why did they want to do it with Obama?
No, they didn't want to do it with Obama. They did nothing with Obama. Holy shit. It's barely scratches the surface, okay? Barely scratches the surface into okay, yeah. Okay, so here's the thing is that like they're making steps and they're like it's like one step or like maybe 5 steps. But guess what? Their stairway is like 1,000 steps. Okay, so like anybody could say, "Oh,
then we'll take 1,000 steps."
Hey, thanks for the follow.
Okay,
yeah,
sure. Let's take 1,000 steps. But guess what? If you take 5 steps, guess what? We don't know if they're going to take 10 steps backwards.
Okay? But you never know. Like, why is that bad?
This is what I hate about like people who say eventually. Okay, that's not how the policy is going to play out with. Okay, what you have to think about is they're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And that's it, okay? Then we think about it. We have to think in the present. That's how shit's gonna get done, or at least that's how we're supposed to think.
Is it getting eventually done?
Hey, Chinchilla, you wanna like have a time machine? You wanna make a time machine now and like go forward 50 years? Okay, you wanna do that?
But
okay,
and because that's the issue, right?
Like here's the thing. Yeah, that is the issue. Is that like a lot of people think that they have a time machine and that they know things for certain. Okay, like they see a trend, but then like guess what? It's really easy to just like go backwards.
So Elysium, you wanted to respond, so go ahead.
I didn't quite really follow that. Oh no. So there's like a tangential meme according to all of this, and I think one of the signs of Cuba wanting to move in this direction that I think COVID has put a big pause on. But like they had the whole 2 currency system, which I'm vaguely familiar with, but not in any super detailed way.
That's another thing. Because of their currency reforms, guess what their inflation rate is at?
Their economy, yeah,
500%.
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of the current problems are COVID and reform related, and so like the people that are gonna like be saying, "Oh, this is all America bad. We have to hate America still." Like I feel like they're not gonna have as much ground to stand on post COVID when maybe cooler minds and rationality can say, "Hey, maybe we can have basic amenities and look, we did a lot of problems." And acknowledge that and then say, hey, wow, looks like, being able to trade with other people would be really good. And let's like invest back into that like we did. And it looks like Biden would totally be okay with that because Obama was too. And they're making
all right. Yeah, sure. US will. Okay. But that aside, okay. Do you think the Cuban government is going to think rationally in the same way that they're thinking about it?
Because they made these. Why did they liberalize their currency system before COVID if they're not planning for this?
Since the fall of the Soviet Union, what steps? Excuse me, okay, because they have made steps, okay? I'm not going to give the rhetorical question, okay? Since the fall of the Soviet Union, in which Cuba, they They got a recession because of it, and they
Mhm.
lost their largest trading partner. Okay, the reason why, even though the United States limited it's a bit how much sugar was going to be imported from Cuba, guess what? The Soviet Union bought that sugar. Okay, so it was subsidized basically. But even
Yeah.
after the Soviet Union fell, Cuba continued its current policies the way that it did for a very, very long time.
And I think
like,
it's
you
been
keep on,
really clear that
I love it, and I
post-Castro,
love it. I love it how you keep on bringing up that they're making steps, but I've already said that these steps are very, very, very small in comparison to what Eastern Europe has done and what Vietnam has done. Okay, they
Yeah,
are still the
it's
Soviet style system, and that is problematic. Okay, and like we could go and you could keep on saying that eventually, but I can't see that far into the future. No one can see that far into the future.
I think all we're saying is that like when the goodwill comes from both sides, things are progressing. That's what we saw under Obama.
Boy, yeah.
I honestly like what I think, Jenny, is that Cuba doesn't want to change up their system at all. Well, maybe like the liberalization of like certain aspect, but I generally don't believe in that they want to become like a liberal country because they still want to have their Russian ties as well, because they want to have that protection like money basically
I don't
from
know.
the US, because I don't like that. It's probably, if you're going to talk about eventually, right, it might become like a Vietnam kind of when it comes to like playing the players, right, not as like their system, but playing the players, like playing both fronts. That's basically what I think. So
Sure,
yeah,
and I agree with some of what you said, but I like overall disagree. I understand they're not going to become
buddy
like
buddies.
this liberal democracy friend overnight. I wouldn't expect that at all. That's why you'd have incremental steps. But I think post the Castro regime, well, Fidel handing off power to his brother, and they're clearly in a transitional period where even the government recognized that, hey, to modernize, we need to make some changes. Fidel is going away. Our old authoritarian style needs to go away too. We need to liberalize the economy, and I feel like you can chart a pretty consistent trajectory since then and movement that way. And I think Trump and COVID were huge speed bumps in that trajectory, but I don't think anything has substantially changed to alter that. And so I'm looking
you don't think COVID has altered this at all?
Altered
There's
the
no way.
trajectory.
There's no way.
Speed bump?
Okay.
So I think COVID is a big speed bump to it, but I don't think that if COVID settles down and economies return back
Thanks,
to
FBI
normal,
agent.
and tourism goes back
actually
to
had the
normal,
lights for a while.
and
It's just
the
you
people
didn't
can
see
look at
them
like, hey, maybe
before, I
having
guess.
a more diversified economy is good.
All right. Let's get to
How's the
COVID.
trajectory change? Please explain. Yes.
Let's add COVID to this, because guess what? What happens when COVID doesn't disappear? Because a lot of people are saying that COVID is going to stay here for a long time. Why? Because vaccinations. Okay, the rate of vaccination. We're not going to hit herd immunity with COVID, with the amount of people just in the United States. Okay, and in Cuba,
sure.
right now, how many people are vaccinated?
No idea.
Okay, it's like 25%. Okay.
Okay.
It's very, very low.
Guess what?
And then how many vaccines are they going to be getting? I have no idea if the United States is doing something on the vaccine side. I know that the Biden
Why not?
administration
They're probably getting it from Russia or China for sure.
Maybe I have no idea. Okay, I can't verify that.
We're not going to break the
like,
embargo. Probably.
Okay, but like,
okay, I agree.
This assumption that like COVID is just going to disappear and it's just a speed bump is also a huge presumption to the state of COVID in the future. Okay?
Sure, yes and no. I think yes. There's obviously
What is it?
Everything is predictability. But when we hit round 2 of COVID and we get a vaccine-resistant variant and we have got to do vaccination all over again, I think governments are going to be so fucking aggressive on being, hey, get your fucking vaccine. We're not doing this for the next decade. Get your vaccine. We're moving on from COVID. And I think the political will and the public will, if everyone who's been vaccinated is going to get COVID again, is going to be there for something like that. I
Hold up,
understand what you're saying.
and
it's
like, what about the
potential, but I
people?
don't see
And what
it's
about the
happening.
people who are just going to be like, oh, still, this is just like a hoax, and oh, my freedom, my body, my choice.
Who cares?
Okay. What do you
They're
mean?
gonna-
Who cares?
What
Because
a mandate is. Either you ostracize yourself from society, you get caught for fraud, or you get your vaccine.
and then the
There's
states
not
who
many
don't have
people
the
that are going to
mandates,
go through that loophole.
and then
Definitely
the
not
states,
80.
and then
I
the
mean,
states who
definitely not
don't
more
have
than
the
20%.
mandate that are Republican controlled, or they have a Republican governor, or they have a Republican legislature, or
If we get to round
like
two of
or if it's like
I don't
Wait,
even
now we're
think
getting
federal
hella
mandate, then
sidetracked.
guess what? They're going to take it to the Supreme Court, and then there's going to be legal
There
battles,
may
and
be
then
problems
Sure,
with the
and
very
they'll win
specific
all
variations
those
of code and
battles.
their
They'll win all those things.
effectiveness.
Like the federal
Yep.
government or even the state's government ability to respond to
so black
crises
pilled.
trumps absolutely all of these contingencies. And if we get to
I'm so
if
black
we
pilled on this.
if we have to do vaccines again for everyone because we just can't deal with the issue, we're not going to do that more than 2 or 3 times. It's going to suck. A lot more
Guess
people will
what?
die.
Guess what?
Economies will be fucked over.
You
No
say
government is going to do that a 4th
everyone
time.
again. Okay, again, what? There is no again. Nope. Not everybody is going
Absolutely,
to get
there
the
was
COVID
again. The initial vaccination of America was actually good. Okay, come on.
No, it wasn't. It's
Are you
still
kidding?
as shit.
It's doing
What is-
shit now. The
okay.
initial vaccination was fine.
Yeah,
And it petered out. We got up to
I don't know what
60%
we're
so
talking
fast.
about.
Did you see the vaccination curve? The ability for the government to get on board with
You
these
know-
programs, and that was
know
when
what
people
rate we
who
have
were
to get in order to get
volunteering
herd
and getting
immunity?
access to it.
What
If you change
percentage
this
do we
into a
have to reach?
mandate,
What percentage do we have to reach in order to get herd immunity?
I don't know, like 80 or 90% probably.
Okay, so then we're 20% away, 20 to 30% away, right? Some people say it's 70%. Okay, and like we're pretty close. But
Sure.
the issue with that is if we don't reach that herd immunity, then it's going to stay in our society for forever.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind herd immunity. So like even if second round comes, guess what? The people who got the vaccine the first time are the ones that are going to be getting the vaccine the second time, or the third
This is
time,
literally
or
what I said.
however.
I don't understand
Okay,
what point you're
but
trying
guess
to
what?
make.
But the point is that you're excluding. You're not thinking about that. The people who didn't get the vaccine, they're going to continue to not get the vaccine. Do you agree or disagree with that?
So, okay, that's what I said. When you make this a mandate, you're either ostracizing yourself from society, committing fraud and getting caught for it, or getting the vaccine is like the 3 potential options. If you make it a government mandate for every public service, for every corporation, for all these things, there's not easy ways around that.
There are so many Republicans who say that even if there was a mandate, they wouldn't follow it. Okay?
Yeah, and they'll
rather
say
keep
that
the fine.
until they get forced to do it or get fined to do it, or until like it's not that hard. Until you lose your job because you're not going to get a vaccine, you can make up all the crying you want on Twitter.
I'm kind of like black pilled on this as well.
But
because I think
that's why we're not going to reach herd immunity, is because
Yeah,
they
but-
would do that. Okay, they're that fucking crazy.
like the issue is that you also, even if you vaccinate
Poverty is a
like,
good
people,
motivator.
if you even vaccinate people, that there are other countries that might not be able to do that, and then a new variant will pop up. So yeah, I'm kind of black pilled on this, but I honestly I hope Elysium it goes the way you say, right?
I'm giving like a
hope it-
really pessimistic outlook here. I'm saying, hey, we might have
I
to go
do
through
hope.
COVID 2 or even COVID 3 before people get this together, but we are going to get this together. Like, that's not like an optimistic take.
No. See, we're gonna
Compared
get it.
to
Through.
us,
We're going to get it
kinda.
through together. That's the optimism. Okay. You know what's
Okay.
also really optimistic.
Okay.
All right, Name, you've been really quiet. All right, I'm going on you. Okay, like this idea of if countries just like do things on free, like in goodwill. Okay, that's international relations isn't like that. Okay, it's not as simple as that. Okay, I would love if international
No-
relations were just
oh,
based
no.
on goodwill. Okay, if everybody could just ignore the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, if we could just like be really open to each other, if we just like really had like peak 110% of international liberalism, our world would be much
No
better
one's
off,
expecting
okay?
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what he said. Okay.
Let
No,
name
like
responsible.
okay. What's very weird for me is that literally like 30 minutes ago, you yourself are saying that you thought that that there are very amenable factors in the current geopolitical situation between the U.S. and Cuba for renewing discussions and concessions on both the U.S. and Cuban sides. On the U.S. side, only on the executive, like you pointed out, there's problems with Congress, but at least the executive would be amenable to it, and that Cuba would be amenable to it. And somehow now you're like really adamant that it's like really fucked. I'm honestly confused. Like, I don't know, what did your mind change? Is there something I misunderstood?
No, I don't think it's fucked. I don't think it's fucked. Okay, but what I do think is that COVID is going to have a much larger impact than describing it as a speed bump when it comes to the Cuba situation, let alone what is going to be happening with Cuba and U.S. relationships. And what I do think is that, like, so far in how I've explained things, at least in my opinion, how I view things, is that it's not out of goodwill. This is all very strategic. Okay, it's all very, because it's well, one thing is due to pressure, and pressure leads to one thing, and then other things like that. Okay, that's not goodwill. Okay. And then, like, there's also this idea that, like, people are rational actors. Okay, well, it depends. We could get into semantic games of, like, what rational means. Okay, like, do you think oh, you're being rational? Like, what is the most rational thing to do? Okay, I don't. That's also a thing that I hugely disagree with
when I say goodwill,
thinking about politics.
When I say goodwill, I don't mean it in this like very naive colloquial sense. I mean that when Obama's reaching out to Cuba to reestablish political ties, that is what I'm calling goodwill. Obviously, there's a national interest at play. Obviously, there's a goal of exerting American power. There's exerting power either externally or internally. Perhaps there's like political will for it. There's like a million reasons, and obviously people act, especially governments act, and government officials act in their interests and their constituents' interests. I'm not denying that, but at this point, I just want to like make a semantic aside. That's just what I'm calling goodwill. It's will that's in favor of the changes that we're discussing. The reasons why it's in favor, there's no like moral sense to it. I agree. The reasons will usually be self-interest of different kinds. I never was denying that, just to be clear.
Okay, all right, thank you, because this whole thing, the thing about goodwill, that was just a misunderstanding. Okay, and that's also terrible word choice. But you know what? Because you're French, I'll let it slide. Okay.
It's a word choice I've seen thrown around, but sure.
Yeah, it's like
okay, all right.
Political.
Regardless if it's being thrown around or not, do you
goodwill.
think it was really the smartest idea to use that word?
Yes.
In the way
Yeah,
that
I'll stand
he just
by
said,
it.
that's not what I meant in the colloquial sense. Okay, he already admitted. God fucking damn it.
Yes, because there's a colloquial sense, but the context of the discussion is diplomacy and politics, and it has this slightly different sense in where it's admitted, since we're talking diplomacy and geopolitics, that it's not about like Samaritans, cleaning the feet of the poor and whatnot. It's politics.
Wait, okay, so like, I do agree that there is a there are different terms that are used in like an expertise sense, and there are terms that are like understood as a colloquial sense. I've never seen goodwill being used other than in the colloquial sense. Okay, if you could find me something, okay, and like this is besides the point, but like as somebody who has read the PDFs and things like that, I would like to see the context of goodwill in that you were using in like some sort of an expertise sense, because I've never seen it before. Really curious.
Where I recall seeing it is more in the journalistic context. Speaking of diplomacy and politics, I don't know that I've seen it in like a hardcore, Congress report type PDF situation.
This isn't Congress. Okay, the PDFs that I'm referring to are ones from like professors. Okay, they're the ones.
Okay, like academics.
PhDs, okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
I don't
So,
know.
like,
A professor.
we
wait,
can
wait,
Google it.
but you
Honestly,
just said, in the terms of international relations.
yes,
Oh my God,
in
Namin.
journalism.
Namin. Okay,
Okay,
all right,
and I've seen it
in
used that way in
journalism.
journalism.
In journalism.
Yes.
Okay, find me that then.
Okay, look, honestly, personally, I find semantics like a really irrelevant and boring thing in general. Like, if you don't want me to use that word, I'll like stop using it. I'm not gonna
use that word. Okay?
I'm not gonna go Google a bunch of shit just for a semantic like disagreement right now. Maybe like later at some point I'll try to find it. But
okay, all right.
Yeah, but
no, I don't have that
Wow.
fucking article
Alright.
on hand. That's not something I prepared for this discussion. That's not something I thought was
You can
important.
send it to me tomorrow. You can send it to me the next day.
Name Manon, epically owned. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
You outpaced me
I want
intellectually.
to cut this off because this is not interesting. This semantic debate. So I want to ask you guys another question. Like, Senpai Chow is gone. However, I don't know if he can hear me or not.
He took off his earbuds, so
Okay.
No.
Anyway, no. Okay, no. Let's talk shit about him. No, just kidding. But I just wanted to ask you guys like a question. Oh, he's back. Nice. Just right in time. Welcome back, Chow. So I wanted to ask you a question that's kind of unrelated, but related to Cuba. So do you ever think that Cuba would be interested into because the whole like the embargo probably started after the whole the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Would
No.
you? No,
Sorry,
wasn't
keep it.
that?
Is before I believe.
yeah, I think it started before in the 60s or 50s when the
Oh, it's okay.
when
Sorry,
the
keep,
regimes,
it won't
yeah.
matter to your
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
It won't
sorry.
matter.
Okay,
It's
all right. So
But
the arms
no,
embargo
no.
was started because of Batista. So Batista was really bad. The U.S. had an arms embargo against Cuba because of Batista, and then they continued it even after the revolution because of reasons, and then it got furthered. They added stuff because Cuba did stuff with sugar, things like that, and but the United States stopped exporting oil to Cuba. Okay, that's
it won't matter. Yeah, that's
Would you guys ever think there would be like renewed interest from Cuba to acquire like either
Nukes?
nuclear weapons or stuff like that?
I mean, I think every country has interest in acquiring nukes.
Oh no, there's a bunch of countries that don't want nukes. Actually, as far as nuclear proliferation goes, but civil nuclear energy is something that interests. No, I've looked into it. It's actually there are countries that had the chances to get to become a nuclear power that refused it.
Libya, South Africa.
Again,
Taiwan.
this...
Okay,
Wait,
so
South Africa had a nuclear program, right?
They had a nuclear program, and because of reasons, they stopped the nuclear program.
Yeah, because
at first, what happened is they wanted the nuke, they were building it, and then like some things happened.
Were they even successful too? And they had to disarm it.
No, it's
guys,
not that.
Guys,
okay,
guys,
holy shit. Okay, so then your claim is that countries wanted nukes. South Africa building a nuke, having a nuclear program, is them wanting nukes. Is it not?
Yes.
Okay. Holy shit. My fucking God.
So let's get to the topic at hand inside. No, Elysium. No.
Yeah, it's fine,
let's go to the topic because you guys are derailing too much today. It's like it's the derail show. Yeah. It's like people come in certain chats and they're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? I thought it was Cuba, you know?
Well, let's get back to the COVID vaccine by the... Sorry.
Cringe shatters. Okay.
Cringe shatters. So, so let's go to you then, Neyman. Would you ever see like Cuba wanted to take that road, even though they partially like have like or they have the embargo lifted and they are trading or something with the US? Would you ever... or they don't have it lifted. Would you ever see
what road? Sorry, like nuclear proliferation.
Yeah, the new
Cuba like pushing for a nuclear program.
Oh,
or owning nukes.
I think that if in the hypothesis that you gave, where the U.S. and Cuba establish relations, and we go into that, Cuba goes into that like mixed economy, embargoes lifted, etc., etc. I think Cuba wouldn't jeopardize that by starting to play fucking North Korea, right? Like the US would not want an authoritarian government right next to it having fucking nukes. Obviously, that's what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the reason why it almost led to World War III was because the US obviously doesn't want that for good reason. But I could see them wanting a civilian nuclear program. That's usually something that's pretty poggers for a country. So that would make sense.
Elysium?
I mean, yeah, I tend to agree. I think like if the hypothetical was if every country could like snap their fingers, would they have nukes or not? Absolutely, because it seems to be really reinforced time and time again the only assured deterrence.
Watch out.
Kind of sucks. What? But obviously, because no one wants to completely isolate themselves like North Korea, unless it was like feasible, I don't see any way that they would like realistically build such a program. There could be something said for like China or not China. Cuba has a pretty developed intelligence agency, and whether like they would push that into like trying to get nukes and stuff. I don't know. It would be a big mess and would get them destroyed by America and cause World War III, and I don't think they really want to do that.
Okay, so I will, Chow, I will give you, but please don't go off the tangent of the thing that he said earlier.
God,
I
want to ask this one rhetorical question to Elysium. Okay?
Oh, this is like one question. This is going to be like
Elysium, what do you think I'm going to say
conversation.
in response to your statement just now?
I don't know. You're gonna try to push some realism thing, and obviously snapping your fingers doesn't matter.
Well,
but the whole
I'm
point
sorry,
is
but
sentiment.
Obviously, okay, if I had the ability to snap my fingers to do anything, so many shit would happen. I would have a waifu, all the stupid people would die. That would probably include you in Minecraft. Just kidding, okay, I don't think of you that way. But yeah, okay, that's a pretty stupid hypothetical in determining what people actually want. Is like, okay, well, here's the thing.
No, it's not, because that's what they
Yes, it
want,
is.
but they can't have it. There's
Okay.
a difference.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Do your thing.
I'm just going to leave that alone because like you just seem like really. Forget it. Okay. So
Cuba's best option is to focus
I
on
studied
digital warfare to gain
international
influence.
nuclear law for my paper. I wrote a paper on that, and so I kind of know things about it.
It would be rough.
So yes, there existed countries that
the US has
nukes. They had a nuclear program and they
has a
actually
lead
had
on that.
nukes. But because they acquired it after the non-proliferation treaty, it was illegal for them, and a number of them actually gave up the nuclear program, or they actually gave up their nukes. The number of countries that actually had nuclear programs / nukes went from like 20 something to down to like I think like less than 10, and like one of them, for example, being South Africa. And now there are still countries that like Israel, India, Pakistan that are not the P5 that do have nukes. They're problematic.
I just don't think
the reason why countries don't want to have
it won't get them invaded by
snapping fingers or them like getting rid of like all the costs and like thinking, okay, like if I could get rid of all the costs to a lot of things, then I could get a lot of things, right? Okay, it's not very smart to think that way. The reason why
I don't know that taking a hostile stance towards the US, like developing
energy and
aggressive leverage through like hacking, is
called
the solution.
Atomic Energy Agency, which helps countries build up.
But you want to de-escalate if you want to create closer ties,
not nukes.
Like what I was saying about goodwill,
getting them to like getting them those benefits, and then like there's this idea, and also a lot of regions have their own ban on nukes, and then like I'm pretty sure for I saw.
Oh, sorry, you meant as an option
America,
to like develop some form of military influence, right?
They have their own non-proliferation of nukes there. They have said themselves that, okay, no nukes here. The reason why countries don't want nukes, again, another reason
It
is
would be
that,
like
having
a
nuke
good
is,
way
like,
to
really
to have a
dangerous, for
threat
themselves
in
as
their
well as for
arsenal,
other
right?
people, because they kind of think about them. Oh well, if other people have the nukes, then what am I going to
Thanks
do?
for the
Well,
like, by
I
the way,
kind of want
Frank.
to nuke down in order to
How are you doing?
protect against the people who do have nukes, and then all of a sudden everybody has nukes, and then all of a sudden everybody's kind of like scared of batshit crazy, or like they're batshit scared of each other because everybody has a nuke. Everybody has the ability to then destroy each other, mutually assured destruction, things like that.
Can
That is
you,
why.
Sabacho, can you, yeah, fair
Okay,
enough.
that
Can
is
you address?
that is why most countries don't want nukes. And I
Yeah.
would also think that Cuba would also not want a nuke for that reason. On top of what Naaman said, okay, and I'm going to reiterate that, like, just snapping the fingers, not a realistic hypothetical. Okay, nobody
Okay.
thinks that way.
I
Do you
want to
think-
add like
Never mind, doesn't matter. Go.
like especially as concerning the nuke thing, like what Senpai Chao said, nuclear non-proliferation treaties are effective. They are effective. Countries do sign them and do follow them. It's I really disagree with the idea that every country. I'm sorry, this is 100% derailing, but I just really disagree with the statement that every country wants nukes. It's not a form of power that. It's a form of power that has associated costs, like Chao said, and risks that that a lot of countries look at those and are like, you know what? No, we would rather take steps towards a world with less nukes than more nukes.
And
So,
I think that's already the case in which, like, even the countries that have nukes in like abundant amounts, mainly the United States and Russia, because well, they had their stockpile for the Soviet Union days, over time have been decreasing. So like they're dismantling, and like there were a lot of nukes before. Now there's a lot. There's very little in comparison.
I want to ask like Elysium a question. Do you think that Cuba still wants to have the nukes if they are somewhat on more friendly terms, like embargo?
No.
I don't know, man. Can they snap
No?
their fingers?
So if a country is in a competitive or aggressive position, then they typically are going to want to have nuclear weapons as a deterrent. But if we have generally peaceful relations with your neighbors, it would pose more complications than benefits. So only time Cuba is going to be desiring to have a nuclear program or to like have nukes on it is if it's having an aggressive political relationship with America or someone else in Central America.
Like if you turn that around, like being said that they still have the embargo, all that kind of stuff, like Sanpao Chao, do you think that?
Yeah, like could we have
No.
Cuban Missile Crisis too?
The next question obviously is do you think Cuba should or does have a aggressive position against the United States?
Not currently.
Okay, so then by your logic,
Or not
then by your logic,
covertly.
the answer then what do you mean covertly?
Never mind. Nothing. Never mind. Don't
You
worry
mean
about
like
it.
they would build it in secret?
No, never. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
There can still
No,
be
it-
friction between America and Cuba for sure.
Okay,
but-
yes. There's friction between all countries, all right? But not all countries have nukes in order to use against each other or threaten against each other because it's not aggressive, like you said. Okay, you said the word aggressive. Okay, not frictionless, aggressive,
Mhm.
right? So by your logic, your answer is then that Cuba will not want to get nukes.
That was still
Yeah.
my overall answer. Didn't like I feel like I
Alright.
clarified that a desire to have nukes wouldn't outweigh the practical costs right now.
All right, maybe I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, like, if they were to get rid of the embargo without that much strings attached, they might have like that practical. They can maintain that practical cost, or would you say like that's not what you mean by practical
I
cost?
think that'd be a really good reason as to why the embargo would then go back onto Cuba is if they started to build a nuclear program, a nuclear.
Yeah, I think it's be really hard for a country to opt into that. Like you're going to be ostracized. You're going to turn yourself into North Korea, and it's going to be really hard to like a populace that knows it's going to happen to like accept that just so they have nuclear weapons, unless there's like some Cold War style thing ideologically driven global or even regional conflict going on. Like you're gonna have to have a really hard justification.
To be fair, they could
Wait,
also
there's
like,
no background music,
try to do the
API
thing
agent.
that they tried earlier, like by importing things,
Let me
right?
double check.
Like,
Yeah, there's no background
I mean,
music.
it's still going to result in you being
You
ostracized
have to
from the
be
global
playing music
community
on your
to like
computer.
a severe degree. So like, unless there's communist revolution 2.0 in Cuba, that doesn't seem realistic.
okay. So yeah, we basically talked about a lot of things. I don't know if like name if you still have like one issue you want to address about this topic before I ask the same question to the other people.
Let me just double check my notes. Yeah, there's one thing that connects like some of the different stuff we talked about. The one way where I could see the current situation not being conducive to Biden necessarily wanting to be lenient on Cuba and rather taking like a hardline stance is that as far as embargoes, what embargoes are supposed to accomplish, or specifically the one in Cuba is supposed to accomplish, the fact that there is civil unrest, the fact that there's instability and protests is exactly the usual goal. So if the goal is being accomplished, then I wonder if perhaps there will be a push within the US government to just go even more hardline and expect a full-on revolution at some point, or something more violent in the future, rather than going back to the Obama era. How to put it? How to put it without using the word goodwill?
Goodwill, yeah.
More
Normalization.
lenient. Sorry.
Or normalization, lenient, fine. Go. Sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah, more like a policy that
passive.
Yeah, more
like,
more
as a humanitarian or being a benefactor.
Yeah, like a policy that was more even-handed and reciprocal, right? Rather than exerting power over Cuba and expecting them to change, it was a give and take on both sides, right? At least a little bit. So I wonder in a purely like cynical Machiavellian way if the Biden administration want to look at the current situation and say, well, you know what, we no longer need to do give and take. Now they're in deep trouble. Do we really have to go back to that approach? I wonder what you guys think about that.
Samperchel, what do you think about it?
So sorry, I'm thinking. I don't know if this is going to answer the question. I think because it's kind of a non-answer actually. Now that I think about it, the United States has very little to gain from Cuban, Cuban normalization, because no matter how you look at it, when you just like looking at population, you have a larger population than theirs. Their economic output is going to be very low. Their GDP per capita is very low. Okay, there's very little incentive for normalization. It seems to be that I'm going to be kind of a hypocrite that the reasons why the United States would do the things that it does do with Cuba is actually, no, I'm not going to be a hypocrite because I'm not going to use goodwill. It's going to be out of morals or humanitarian reasons rather than like, oh, there's going to be like a huge benefit, because there isn't a huge benefit. I think like when it comes to, I guess, like democratic presidencies, that's going to be the case, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. I don't think anybody in Congress or in the executive is like really thinking about like the effectiveness of sanctions or whatnot. I think they'll use that argument, but like that's not really going to be the main drivers as to their decision making. I think the problem then for the United States is the case that a Republican gets to be the executive, and then what you already said, Naaman, repeating what you said, is that like we go back and forth. But so long as like a Democratic president is in the office, then I think they're going to really think back as to what did Obama did, what did Biden did, what did all my predecessors do, and let's continue that. That tends to be the platform, and platforms don't really change unless like there's some big shift.
Elysium?
Fuck. What's the question? Where? How could we see this being?
The question was
Machiavellian pressure in Cuba.
Yeah, the question was from sorry, go ahead. You're gone.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Trump did that rhetoric with the Iran sanctions of like maximum pressure stuff. So I guess if Trump or a Trump similar person gets in, you could see rhetoric like that. I don't think people care about Cuba enough for that to be like politically relevant to do. It's like I don't think it's gonna score you the same political posture and endpoints that like setting up that rhetoric around Iran would.
If I had to like add more
there you go.
stuff.
Go for it.
Sorry, if I had to add more stuff, what I really like about this podcast is that for the most of the time we like to think of practical terms, but then typically when it comes to like decisions made in politics and up in those areas, it tends not tends it's less practical and more ideological than what we're used to, or how we like to frame things. So then like when it comes to, like the effectiveness of sanctions, it's someone like me, someone like us, we'll bring that up often. But then as we can tell, when it comes to politics, it's more so Democrats think more like, I guess, humanitarianly when it comes to Cuba, and then Republicans think a lot more aggressively of like they're communists and they're socialists, they're the enemy, thing like that. It just tends to be more that way. And so then I don't think there's even like a Machiavellian mindset when it does come to Cuba. Though, if I could snap my fingers, okay, I would like I would like for governments and politicians to think more in terms of cost benefit, utilitarian, and things like that. But they tend not to, and it's very disappointing. In other words, they're stupid, and I'm smart.
Yeah, okay. I think that answers your question, right, Naeem? Like pretty much, or
yeah. I want to gather your thoughts on the matter, because this is obviously like speculation too. It's mostly because of the NSA reports, for example, that I read. It's very explicitly, and it was mostly about Iran. This stuff that I read, it was very explicitly like the director telling Congress, like, our goal is to destabilize the government. It's for people to go out in the streets and like stir shit up.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's happening, then I could see some like hard line, maybe not even conservative, but like war hawkish, because that's something that kind of transcends party lines in some ways. People, especially in like the security parts of the government, looking at the situation and being, I guess, kind of opportunistic, having this kind of opportunistic POV on it. But yeah, you guys answered. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I guess I could see a pathway for that. Okay, so say we see that like Havana syndrome meme has been like directly tied more to Cuba, and like Cuban intelligence has been like doing a lot more disruptive things to America and stuff. Maybe like I could see like maybe there could be like some put in general that would complicate this, and then capitalize on this to be like, hey, to apply more pressure. But like the whole point of that is, I think you would need some additional development to the current situation for there to be like enough even political care to put maximum pressure on Cuba. Like,
right.
I actually I don't.
Right,
there
would need to be escalation.
Yeah.
And when comparing it to Iran does a lot more stuff that the United States would want to fight against.
And the popular opinion is already against Iran too, where it's not really even that much against Cuba, or in the popular opinion is even not even for the sanctions in the first place too.
So then Iran has wanted to get nuclear weapons. That's something that triggers the United States. Iran is
Hell yeah.
also like really close to Israel, in which the United States is really desperate to keep as an ally for the sake of regional politics, geopolitics. And Iran is a huge sponsor of terrorism. Iran has gotten in the way of U.S. operations into the Middle East. Cuba really hasn't like done a lot of the things that Iran does. That like
Maybe.
makes the United States want to intervene. So then, I do think that like, hey, when it comes out that like in 20 years, when there's a piece of paper from the Senate that says like, yeah, the CIA did this, or like the NSA did that, or US did this, it'd be like, oh shit, like yeah. But then I think that's like a huge problem with actually with me, is that I tend, because like I'm so into this idea of like thinking only with the information that I have. I can't really think about like I guess what could be, because to me it's like most of the time it's not real. But like what happens if it is real? It's like, oh shit, man, like benefit of hindsight, I guess.
Mhm. Like name, do you have like another question that you wanted to ask? Did you have some notes? Right.
No, I think I'm cool. I said what I wanted to say.
What about Elysium and Chow? Do you guys have like anything that you want to address around this topic?
Okay, so this was a while ago, and it's more so tangential than anything. But Elysium,
no.
when it comes to like, you mentioned this airplane being shot down. You said like it was a tourist plane.
I remember correctly, yeah.
Okay. This might have been a different plane, but from what I read yesterday, the plane was I believe like of a far right group organization. Not far right, excuse me. But it was basically like it was.
Oh, they might have been political activists. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. There was some.
There were
Yeah, go ahead.
anti-Cuba political activists. Those are the
Mhm.
perfect words to describe that, and that's why Cuba shot them down. And American civilians were on that, and then that's what led to a particular act to be imposed. So then, yeah, I
That sounds right.
kind of
Yeah.
wanted to do like, I guess like a little fact check on that, but it's not that big of a deal. Wanting to make sure that we're not spreading misinformation. But speaking of misinformation, yeah, like the CIA thing when it comes to Cuba, like no evidence. And what's really funny is that
It's
the Cuban government was like posting stuff about,
Hey, thanks for the follow, Peter Chance.
Look at this
Welcome
picture.
to the
This picture is
welcome
like,
to the last
it's
chat.
by the CIA.
We've been through all of them.
But it was actually like a picture of an pro-government protest. That's what happened. So that was really funny.
Gotta collect them all.
I guess like it seems to be that when it came to the topic of Cuba, 1 month ago, that a lot of people were like fitting into, or like they were playing their ideological clown part. Oh, I'm a leftist, I'm a socialist. Of course, it's America's fault.
Yeah, I should tell Chinchilla to put the names. I do it on my stream, but
type in CIA, or like when I type in Cuba, CIA comes up. Yeah, Mike from PA, you fucking moron! Holy shit.
Yeah,
so every conspiracy is like basically CIA did it, right? It's
well, it's also, it's like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, but the opposite. We've had like 40 years of real CIA conspiracies, so now anytime something happens, it's just so easy to point at them and be like.
Speaking of that, so then the Senate already like made some things of like what the CIA tried to do to Fidel Castro. So like the assassination attempts. Apparently there was like a lot of assassination attempts against Fidel Castro from the CIA, but like this is according to what Cuba said, and there was like up to like 1,000 or something. But like when you look at like the documents of like verified CIA assassination attempts against Fidel Castro, it's something along the lines of like, the CIA contacted like a mafia member in Cuba, and like they gave them a powder, and then the mafia member was supposed to put the powder into like a drink that Fidel Castro would drink. But then what happened is that like the mafia member fucked up and threw it out, and then like the CIA would be like, oh, we'll give you a gun, and then like and then mafia member was like, okay, and then they disappeared. Apparently, like it's the assassination attempts weren't like this like 007, oh my god, CIA agents are gonna like go into or like SEAL Team 6 are gonna go into like this helicopter stealth mode and they're gonna drop down and things like that. No, it's nothing like that.
I hear what you say,
they exaggerated so much.
But
it's
I don't
hilariously incompetent.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like incompetence isn't necessarily an argument for like not being well, not well, yeah. I mean, the fact that they're incompetent doesn't change the fact that they still tried to stir a bunch of shit.
I agree. Okay, like it's bad that they did this. It's bad that they did the assassination attempts. But what I am pointing out is that like a lot of people would seem like they exaggerate what the CIA does. And they'll think like, oh my god, they're putting in people in government and they're like everything is compromised, social media, communications, all their resources, all the companies, things like that. It's all CIA. It's like, no, it's like some mundane stuff.
So yeah. I wanna address like a question from the stream. Should we have a population exchange of American Marxists for Cubans wanting American freedom?
I saw that I saw that message and I immediately thought of the latest like Zai Squirrel Destiny
meme
shit. Yeah, where like Zai Squirrel was asking for money to be able to move to Cuba. I think if the like what we mostly seem to want here is for like a redo of the Obama era, like diplomatic opening up, etc. And I mean, if Zai Squirrel or other like hardcore lefties wanna go live the communist dream in Cuba, then they'll be able to. I'm sure Cuba will, if they're like capable of contributing to the workforce and the culture and the economy, then I'm sure Cuba will take them in.
That's the best argument I heard for like lifting the embargo.
True. It's a good meme, but like this just if there's immigration and people want to move to Cuba, cool.
Joe, you want to respond or?
Yeah. All right. Seriously, okay. In all seriousness, I think that there are actual leftists who are really patriotic about America. I think there are leftists. In fact, I would probably no, I wouldn't be one of them. But like, I'm really progressive. I would say so myself, and I really want like America to be the best that it can. And so then like to do in exchange of like all leftists, like it's like no, but like if I'm a big believer of
no forced exchange could ever be good.
Okay. all right. Okay. But what I was going to say is I'm a big believer of the free movement of people, and if they do want to move, okay, I agree with Naaman. If they do want to move, they sure can. A big roadblock is that the United States government wouldn't allow them to unless they did it illegally or they were authorized to, which I don't think they would be authorized just to move there.
Are they able to move back then as well?
As a side, oh yeah, they are able to move back.
Damn it.
So like, yeah, I know, damn it. But it's not really a damn it for you because like you're in the fucking Netherlands, okay? Now, here's a side note here, okay, is that I don't think anybody would, because I think most leftists are like really privileged, and like when you're gonna confront them on that, they're either gonna be like, "What? You can't just do that. That's not an argument." It's like, no, it's just like my thought. But it's like, but they hate America. It's like you hate America. It's like, you have this opportunity when you take it. It's like, oh, it's like I don't think they would because, they're really privileged by living in this country, and they wouldn't want to sacrifice that for some ideological reason. But they wouldn't admit it. I don't think they'll admit it.
I honestly think
also,
that
sorry.
One thing is they would be back in 2 months. That's one thing. I think. But the second thing I thought it's like they would argue they would argue that it's not the right style of communism or Marxism. They would argue about that. They would just say, like, "Oh, well, that's not the right way. I want to have this Pacific style." Like they would find like a cop out. That's basically how it works. But now you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, what Montreal Player is saying in your chat is actually different from freedom of movement. What he's proposing is very weird. It's as if like in hostage situations where you like trade prisoners. That's what he's actually proposing.
See, okay, so that's a little bit more force in the.
We give you our leftists, and you give us your
immigration. All right, immigration. Actually, like I wouldn't want to move to Cuba, but what I would want to do is I would like to visit Cuba, and I would have a lot of respect for leftists who go to Cuba, not for like maybe for the sake of moving, but like with the idea that like, hey, I actually want to do this. Like if they're genuine about it, I'm like, yo, good for you. And like, or like if they want to go there in order to like help the country because like they want to contribute to the cause and they want to contribute to the revolution, I'm like, yeah, go do you. That's awesome. That's fucking awesome. But then like to the people who are like, oh no, you can't do blah, blah, blah.
Why aren't these leftists moving to Vietnam? Like there is no cause. There is no communist movement anymore.
So then so like 1, Vietnam market socialist. 2, Vietnam is very far away. 3, and like Cuba's really close. So then,
Cuba's not communist either.
So when you talk like North Korea, they have like some Americans living there, right? So that's like maybe if you go to Cuba and say like I want to be Cuban, they're gonna be like, this American revoked his passport to live here. Look, Cuba is greater than the U.S.
Just move to North Korea, forehead.
Yeah, just move. Got him.
Yeah. Well,
never mind.
Do you have?
Yes, I have one thing. I have one last thing. Okay, Nairman.
Yep.
People like to do a lot of the CIA meme.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Cuban intelligence agency has been just as destructive as the CIA in the Cold War and all these like back and forth training of militants in different countries and stuff. So like I don't know. I think people meme that way too hard and it's kind of dumb, and a lot of these things are reciprocal. And a whole, I mean, it was the fucking Cold War. There's a bunch of back and forth on both sides.
First off, like, yes, but Cuba is no longer a threat on that scale. Secondly, it was a threat because it had the support of the USSR and the KGB, and that's how it exerted like espionage and covert operations, like notably in South America. And finally, I'm pretty sure no one denies that the remnants of the KGB and how they basically gave rise to Putin's reign over Russia are not a threat and a hugely dangerous and negative force in the world power structure.
So why are we crying about CIA things that happened during the Cold War and not about?
Because the CIA still exists, right?
So does Cuba's. Why is it called Havana Syndrome? Why is like the intelligence stuff happening in Cuba? Because it's a friendly training ground for that thing still.
Okay, honestly, I wasn't aware of them like in the recent like 10-20 years.
Cuba's intelligence agency still exists.
No, it still exists, but does it like train separatists? Does it train basically the terrorists for South American countries so they can like operate do covert operations and because that's what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, but America's not doing that right now either. As I was saying, this is all in the Cold War. Are we training militants for South American countries right now?
His grander point was that it was in the past, and therefore people are like saying that it.
But in that past, Cuba did just the same, if not worse.
Sure, I'll concede that. I think that it's the reason people have that skewed perception is basically just because we focus. Yeah, you focus on the more powerful one, right? The more powerful one, they both did shitty things, but the more powerful one, obviously, when they do shitty things, they can do them more effectively.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'll agree.
Okay. Was that your only point, Elysium, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've covered everything else I looked at. I don't know. Cuba's dumb.
Yeah. So
Fuck you, bud.
so Senpai Chow, eventually this comes to an end, right? This podcast. Sorry, I'm just messing with you.
Incrementally, even.
Well, I got in my point about education, so yeah, we're good.
Yeah, you gotta say something about education before we. No, just kidding. But thank you guys. It was a bit heated today, right? But thank you guys for coming on. Like all these guys stream, so check them out. Like Senpai Chow, Elysium, and Neyman. So check those guys out. And obviously, like I stream as well, Chinchilla__. So if you are hanging out in another chat, I would appreciate maybe considering giving me a follow. So that being said, like we still gonna decide on next week's topic. If you if Senpai Chow
Well, I got last
It
week,
was
then we
a
got
good
this
one.
week. It seems like following the order that next
Okay.
week ought to be Elysium.
okay.
True.
Well,
Oh,
Elysium,
no.
Elysium. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, really wish you could just snap your
I
fingers and get a
still
topic, right?
want to talk about taxes, okay?
Okay,
My
yeah,
big
man,
question that I need to come to resolution on internally, so I'm going to put it off on you guys too, is the estate tax effective in recouping capital gains, essentially?
Okay, so we want
Yeah, can we not say capital gains because there's a capital gains tax?
to.
Well, no,
Yeah, but-
that's the whole point, because the capital gain tax doesn't apply until those gains are realized, and if you never realize them and you die, that gets recouped by the estate tax instead.
Can
So the whole
can we
question
expand
is
that-
the estate tax effective? Yeah, we can expand it too.
Yeah, in general, to
including
like
the capital gains
what the estate tax is supposed to accomplish and whether it's effective at that, etc. Right? Like
Yeah,
discussing the
We can have
estate
two
tax as a whole.
questions because explicitly I need to answer that question, and then we can
Okay.
also do other stuff too.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm proposing to expand it because personally, the one thing that's always bothered me on principle, like in practice, I don't mind, but on principle, the one thing that's always
The
like
estate tax, yeah.
with the estate tax is that it's basically a form of double taxation, right? You earn money your whole life, you pay taxes on it, it's all legit, and then someone inherits that money and they have to pay taxes on it again, which is usually something you want to avoid on principle.
but you pay value-added tax, so what are you even talking about? Right?
Oh yeah, true. You get double taxed through VAT.
Yeah,
That's true.
So I
Yeah.
think this is
Yeah,
okay,
you VAT
but-
cook. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Get
let's forget
wrecked.
my point.
Just kidding.
Whatever.
Just kidding.
Well, no, now you just expand it. It's a triple tax. That's even
Yeah,
worse.
it's triple taxation is where we draw the line.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with this.
Senpai Chow, you're fine with that as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
But because
I do wanna-
You propose Elysium to.
Sorry, I do want to say one thing though. It's kind of weird because, like in the U.S., the estate tax kicks in, if I recall correctly, at $5 million or something like that,
Something
where
like that, yeah.
you're exempt up to an insane amount. So
Yeah.
like, no one, like if you're not in a super wealthy family, that shit just doesn't matter.
Only
What's
5
the
million?
exemption in
That's a
France?
small
up
house.
to?
In France, the exemption is like 5 figures. I don't remember exactly. I think it's 10K or 30K. And then
Okay.
it's a progressive bracket. So like from 0 to that first
good.
is 0% tax, and then from that, like let's say it's 10K. I forgot the exact amount. From 10K to like 50K, it'll be 5%. From 50K to 100K, it'll be etc. Until it past I think it's past 600K. It gets to 40 or 50% taxation, and that's like the maximum. It tops out there.
Okay.
So yeah, let's talk about that next week more. So for now, this is bye. So next week we will be back, hopefully, if we don't have a fallout after this or something, you know.
Nuclear fallout?
Over
Oh,
goodwill.
Nuclear. Oh.
Chinchilla, be really careful. I could just snap my fingers and things will happen, you know?
Yeah. That's what I mean. So So yeah. So
I'm forever
it's,
holding you to that. It's so funny now.
Are you going to keep on streaming, Neyman?
No, I need to.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Is
Chow,
someone
you
else?
probably do, right?
What's up?
You're probably going to stay on streaming. Stay streaming.
Yeah. Oh my god, I can't
nice.
believe you asked Neiman first before me. What, were you gonna raid him?
Because I already
God.
rated you twice, right? So I
You
thought
hate me.
True.
I get it. All right.
so. And that's also true, but that's besides the point. No, just kidding.
No.
So yeah, thank you guys, and see you guys next week.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having us
Good
on.
talk. Yeah.
Yep.
I hope
Bye-
it
bye.
was all right. Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It was fun. There was a whole moment in the middle there where things got like Chinchilla said, things got heated, and I feel like we completely lost the point. It got buried in a bunch of tangential stuff, a little bit of semantics and whatnot. So, but we got back to the actual discussion, and when we were actually discussing the point, it was fine. I feel like. Sorry, Peter Chance, I didn't respond. I didn't respond that much to chat. Sorry about that. It's hard when I want to be focused on the discussion more than like muting myself in Discord and talking with chat all the time. Because then I lose focus on the discussion, which is kind of what happened to me last week. So I didn't want to do that again. Yeah, I'm not gonna stream for I'm not gonna stream much longer because I'm tired, and honestly I have an issue with my sleep schedule right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna raid Senpai Chao, since that's who we're raiding apparently. I'm gonna send you over to him. Yeah, thanks for watching, and you know, I'll stream tomorrow. Imagine sleeping. I know, right? Damn, Elysium, you didn't go to Senpai Chao. You actually came to watch my stream. You're my like double agent. You're my Havana syndrome. I'll train you in covert Twitch operations to overthrow Senpai Chao's chat. All right, go forth, my children. Bye bye.